trade up.
Something. They need something.
I'm kind of having a
Rob, what
problem
school
with.
do you work at?
Sorry?
Sorry,
What
Cody, go
school do
ahead.
you work at?
Concordia University in St. Paul.
Okay. Are they doing any in-person stuff yet, or are they staying distance?
We stayed in person all year.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, but students had the option, or when they got put on the COVID list, then they zoomed in. But yeah, so I've been running face-to-face and Zoom every period all year long. It works. It's not the best, but it works.
I'm actually thinking if this happened 10 years ago, we really couldn't have done this. This is,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. So I think what we can do is pretty kind of crazy good,
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. How different things would have been if this happened 10 years ago.
Even 5.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're right, Cody. Hopefully our people, we don't even have a. Hey, John, how are you?
We're here and surviving. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
No, it's not that bad. It's Monday, but it's actually Tuesday.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody had a good start to the second semester. So.
Well, we definitely did. I'll give it another minute or so. We've got a quorum right now just to see. I had kids with a lot of technical issues today. I don't know what was going on. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, my computer was cutting in and out, even my phone.
Huh.
So I've got a Google phone, so maybe it might have been on the Google's end. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, and as I say that, I have phones popping up. How can I help you? How can I help you?
Yeah, no kidding.
Open
Hello,
phone.
Jennifer. Hi, Adam.
Ask me to call a contact or business.
Google is listening to everything you say, John.
Yeah, they sure are, because they're just trying to ask me if I can help, or they can help me. I'm like, no, just leave me alone.
All right. Well, we have a quorum. Why don't we start? I know that, we'll probably have other people join in. So I'll go ahead and start the workshop. And just to quickly go down, so it's 5:02, Michelle. And just to let you know, I'm present. Do I do a roll call for why have I? It's just been one of those years. We do a roll call or not for workshop? Why can I not remember?
I don't think so.
No, it's not a meeting.
So I see me. I'm here. But I'll just let Michelle. As the people come in, I'll note who isn't. All right. So we'll first hand it over to John. He sent us some information on employment contract discussion, which looks real similar to the board training that I had and Jennifer also had, and Rob had probably this year.
Yep.
So you want to start off with our workshop?
Yeah, sure will. Thank you, Annie. So yeah, a number of you will recognize some of this because some of it is taken directly out of the MAX primer as it relates to school employment. And then some of it is also taken off of the, the employment agreements from the Minnesota Employment and Economic Development website. And you have those resources at the bottom of the document. So feel free to go back and look at them if you want. But fundamentally, you as a board, and this is kind of a follow-up from the workshop that Mr. Eugene Piccolo gave to the board about our contracts with employees, and we really have to decide what do we want our contracts to look like, because right now they have the appearance of both the there's some time element in it, and then we have at will sprinkled in. So we really, as a school, need to decide: do we want our employees to be at will, or do we want them to be term contracts? And kind of walk you through the difference between the two, with the idea of, at the board level, you have to make a decision which direction you want to go. Do you want to be at an at-will school, or do you want to be a term employment school? And then from that, I can bring or provide examples of, 3 or 4 at-will contracts or 3 or 4 term contracts, although they'll probably be very similar. But fundamentally, you have to decide which one do you want to be first, and then we can go about bringing up different appearances of the contract. So in order to make that decision, you really have to understand the difference between the two. And there's really 3 different types of contracts, but one of them is, it relates to collective bargaining groups. And being we do not have that at MSA, we're not going to spend time talking about what those contracts look like because it doesn't apply. Now, if we ended up having unions at the school, there are 3 charter schools in the state of Minnesota that are union. Everybody else is either at will or term contract. So we're going to spend our time looking at those two specific types, the at will or the term contract. So kind of diving into it, before we jump into what is an at will, because Minnesota is because MSA is a charter school, we're governed by Chapter 181 of the Minnesota General Employment Law, which states that we have to establish some kind of employment contract with our employees. So what is an at-will employment or an at-will contract? Basically, this is a type of contract that means the employment relationship could be terminated at any time by either party. So if I get a call from MDE tomorrow and I'm just fed up and I just say I quit, I can be done. I just let you know, basically, I'm not coming in tomorrow, I'm done working. Because we'd be an at-will, if we're at-will, I could do that. Or the flip side is the employer could discharge an employee for any legal reason or for no reason, with or without notice, which puts the employees kind of at pins and needles to some extent. I actually worked at a charter school that was truly at will, and I did see employees come to work and they did something, a lot of times we never knew what it was, and they were walked to their car and that was the end of their employment. We never to be seen or heard from again on campus. So it does add a little apprehension, I would say, amongst the staff, because you never know. Today could be the day. So there is definitely some drawbacks to an at-will employment. There's other, that some people like to have that freedom. There are a couple other things you should be aware of, though, with that, and is if the employer, in our case MSA, were to need to make changes to the terms of employment, we wanted to change the hours the people are coming in or something to that notice, to that effect. When you're at will, as an employer, all you have to do is give the employee notice that you're doing it. The employee doesn't get to agree or disagree with that. The change just happens. The flip side of that, though, is if the employee doesn't agree with it, they have the right to just walk out and quit, and you can't stop them. So that's kind of the big, I guess, I don't know if you call that a pro, but probably the big difference between at-will versus a time contract is with an at-will employee or employment, either party can terminate whenever they want to. Obviously, you can't do it for illegal reasons, but you can terminate that. One of the things that I do not like about this particular scenario is it puts student learning at a disadvantage. We have had staff members in the past because of this resign in the middle of the school year, and that puts a lot of pressure on the school to find a qualified candidate to fill in, and student progression and learning is definitely impacted. So if you were to push me, do you like at-will employment? That's the one reason I do not like it at all. On top of the fact that you have a lot of uncertainty within the staff, just because you don't know, and you hear and some people have seen cases where employees have been walked out of the door, and you don't know the reason why, and you probably will never know the reason why, but it has happened at other schools. I don't know of that happening here at MSA. If it happened before I was here or not, I don't know. That's in contrast to the term contracts, where you have a specific set amount of time of employment. Typically for schools, it's year to year. And that's kind of what our contract says right now. You're employed starting on this date, your end date is this day. Depending on if you're a full-time 12-year or 12-month employee, or if you have a school year contract, those dates are adjusted. So, for example, an EA's contracted time may not be the same amount of time that a teacher's contract is. And a 12-month employee's contract is going to look different because their start and end time is very different. But it has a specific length of employment with a specific start date and a specific end date. The compensation and the benefits and the job duties and the circumstances for termination they're included in the contract. However, they're typically included in a handbook that goes with the contract, and the job description goes with the contract. So when you sign your contract, you're getting all these other documents as well. The one thing about a term contract then, because you're signing at that time, any changes in employment that are going to happen have to be mutually agreed upon, or else you can't enforce that change. So once we pass, in our case, and this is kind of what we're doing already, we give a staff handbook. At the time of employment then, when that's offered and signed, that's a legal document. If you're going to change that, you have to have the employee agree to the changes, or else those changes are null and void. So it has to be a mutual agreement between the two parties in order to change the contract. The one thing about this, you can include in that contract, and this is something that MSA does not do, but if you go to this end, I would like to see something put in there, that if an employee seeks to terminate the contract early, you can include some terms that have to be fulfilled in order for that to be terminated early. And this is where a lot of the traditional school districts with unions will put in, yeah, we'll release you from your contract, but you have to do A, B, and C, or these conditions have to be met before you can be released. Sometimes that's a monetary fee that has to be paid to the school. Sometimes it's a matter of you're not going to be released until your replacement's on campus. But those conditions for release of a contract early have to be stated in the contract before that contract's signed. And that's something, like I said, MSA doesn't do that at this time anyway. The other thing that you should be aware of is if we have it in the handbook, that's part of the contract. And part of the difficulty that we have now with our contracts is that we have a handbook that goes with a contract that says it's at will. So what's in the handbook can be in certain situations construed to be a contract, so that you can't release an employee because the interpretation may be, well, this part of the handbook is a contract. So unless I'm breaking that, or you have to at least abide by this particular section. We do that in our handbook, we have progressive discipline of the employees. So we can't just walk in and say, you know, okay, we're going to let you go, even though our contracts say they're at will, because our handbook says we're going to follow these procedures before an employee would be let go. So there are things already in our handbook that are lending or leading us to a term contract. Some of the benefits of having a term contract would be that we add stability to our educational process, so students don't have the disruptions. Because if you know, as a teacher, I'm locked in and I'm teaching until the end of the school year, you're probably not as apt to go out and look for a new job while you're teaching for that school year. So you're going to finish the year out, which is much more beneficial to the students. It does give a lot more security to the staff. So, you know, yeah, I've got a job locked up at least until, you know, the end of the contract. And the other thing it does is it does aid in hiring other employees from other schools or people looking to become an employee, because they know you're making that commitment to them for at least a year, rather than being at will. Do I really want to leave this if I'm employed at another school? You know, do I really want to leave this school and go to an at-will school where 6 months or 3 months from now I might not even have a job because I'm not guaranteed at least filling out that entire school year? So there is a little, you know, there's an additional benefit with the term contract in that it gives that initial hire some stability and some guarantee that they're going to have at least a year to show their craft. The other part of that is it does increase our talent pool because talent, our talent of our staff, because the talent pool when we're going about looking for an employee is larger than it is when we're trying to fill a gap in the middle of the year. That's not to say we won't find a qualified candidate in the middle of the year, but the likelihood is to find a more qualified candidate would be when if we're looking for a position, looking for it at the end of the school year when everybody's out there looking, and all the new college students have graduated and are looking for jobs, rather than typically we've found in a couple of situations where we've had staff members leave in the middle of the school year for another job, the talent pool or the number of candidates that we have is substantially less than what we have in the spring or even during the summer when we're looking for a replacement for the entire year. If you were to push me for a number, it's at least half as many candidates, if not more. So that's kind of a quick breakdown of the two. I guess, you know, it's a time for discussion or maybe contemplation about what direction does MSA want to do or go as far as, you know, what kind of employment they offer all of their staff members.
John, there's been a couple of unique situations over the past at least year and a half or so since I've been on the board. How, if we leaned into the term contracts, How many situations has MSA been in the past where we would not have been able to dismiss an employee for issues that have come up?
Well, there would have been, so let's see, we've had in the past, well, we've had 3 employees that have not filled the entire school year out, that I'm thinking of specifically. Of those 3, one of them would have been dismissed regardless because they would have fallen under the progressive discipline. So they would have been terminated regardless if they were under either one. The other 2 probably would have completed the year. If they were in term contracts, a purely a term contract, they would have completed the year, unless they were to basically buy out, they complete the terms for being released out of the contract early, which I don't think they would have done.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Those
So,
two
John-
individuals.
Oh,
for a
sorry.
different, oh,
Good.
sorry.
No, good, yeah.
Those individuals, though, they were looking for a different position, right? It wasn't because of discipline that they left, correct? The other
Right.
two?
So in that scenario, where we had an employee that was let go, had they had a term contract, the school would have been obligated to continue their employment. They would have ended up filling at some other position or some other need within the school.
So my question is, Minnesota is an at-will state. Where does that line versus this term contract, where's that line?
So Minnesota is the at-will. By default, charter schools are at will, unless the charter school board of directors decides to enter into contracts. So the board, if you decide, maybe you can't decide, then by default we are at will. So we're at will unless the school board wants to go and enter into term contracts. I don't know if I answered your question, Rob.
Yep, nope, that's my understanding too. I just wanted to make sure because we're a contract at our private school and I knew we had some ability to do that. I wasn't sure about the public charter, how that worked.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess, action-wise, if the board decides not to take any action, then that would be an indication that I would go about making or bringing some at-will contracts back to the board to look at, because by taking no action, you're in essence falling back to the default mode of charter schools, which is at will.
And then also with regard to this, I know we kind of talked about individuals who sort of, like, if their job was sort of reclassified or something, perhaps, the position is kind of not really needed, so they're reclassified. What about the example, so if an individual signs their contract in April and then lets us know in August that they're not really coming back, then we could still hold them to those, requirements to be released, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Once they sign the contract, that becomes a legal binding document. So then in order for them to break that contract, they would have to meet the contingencies or the whatever agreements were put into that original contract to be released.
Would the details for the terms of those release be hammered out by the board? Would that go to committee? Is that an administrative task?
Typically, because the contract is between the board and the employee, the board would have to be the body that agrees to or approves that language. However, the board could give that task to whoever they wanted to, whether it be a committee, a subcommittee of an existing committee, or they could assign the administration to come up with, what this looks like and what that language is.
And right now, again, we have a fusion of both, which was since you've been here, that has been the situation, or has that changed?
No, the language in the contracts, basically when I got here, I just took the existing contracts and we just continued on with the language that was already in there. We haven't done anything to them since I've been here, and it's always been on the back burner that we got to fix this. This just doesn't seem right. Well, I guess we're at that point right now.
So when we were in session with Eugene, he shocked us all when he said, "I wouldn't sign this contract." But can we review what he meant by that, please?
So I think the reason he said that because the contract had both a term and the at will were combined, so that you have a term time, but it says the contract language itself said you could be dismissed at any time for basically any reason. So because that's written in the contract, that's part of the contract. And it's, even though it says it's at will, you have a contract. So, and when we looked at my contract, it's from this date to this date, but it's really not a contracted term, because anytime the board wanted to, you could just say, "Yep, Mr. G, we don't like you anymore. See ya, bye." And because that's written in the contract, you could do that. And my contract isn't unique. Every employee at MSA has the same language in their contract.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I do remember that, and I've seen my contract. I looked it over before we got on, and it does. It's okay. Well, how shall we proceed with this? Do you feel? I mean, we have to make decisions. Tell us the timeline again. Contracts for teachers go out when again, John?
Well, they go out later in late April, early May. However, before that, you have my contract. So I would like to be able to keep all employees having the same type of contract and pretty much most of the same language, if at all possible. I think once you deviate from that, then you start unintentionally creating different classes or groups of employees. And I don't know if you want to do that. I think, keeping the employees all having the same language, the term of the contract may be different, but having the same language, I think, is valuable, especially when everybody has the same handbook. We're all governed by the same handbook. Obviously, we have different job descriptions, but the handbook's the same for everybody as well. So, probably want to have something in place by the end of February, going into the March. So probably something that can be approved at the March board meeting.
Yeah. Would a discussion of just where to go with either of those right now? So, and I know you had agreed to put a couple together. I mean, as admin, put a couple together, whatever we just decided to go for. I don't know if that's something we have to motion for to decide, or just decide on that's where we need to head. And then you would bring a couple. And I know, Cody, you have like a 40-minute presentation next February, you thought, maybe for financing?
That's what I was going to aim for.
Okay. So maybe, we can look at those and then maybe make it, but March board meeting's too late. Am I right?
Yeah, the March board meeting, you want to be able to, I would say, approve the language for your contracts. So really, what we should do is have a discussion as to which type of employee contracts you want to have either at will or a term. And then the next workshop that February, I could bring a couple of samples to look at. And then, that way we can vet it for another month. And then come in the March board meeting, everybody will have seen it already. So we have a really good idea of what we want to do as far as a contract goes. So
I think that's good. Does everyone agree with that? Maybe we can hone in on, I know we could be all together doing this, but no, we're virtual. Should we just take a feel out there, get the feels out? I mean, let's look at will. Put a hands up if you feel at will is where you would want to go with contracts for all staff. All right. How about time? All right. So I think it's a pretty clear, that's where we'll go. So John, if you would provide just a couple of samples at next board meeting. And then after Cody rivets us with his snappy finance education for us, which I could use, then we can maybe, and we can always keep it also on the agenda. If we have to put it on the agenda because we don't get to it, we could do that also.
Right. From my experience, the key to successful term contracts is that there needs to be a clear process when somebody is not doing their job to be able to quickly make sure that they change their behavior, or then they have breached that contract in which they can be released. And so that, I think, is hugely important. Otherwise, somebody mails it in September and the students suffer the rest of the year. That's the downside of a term contract. But you can make those, you can have language in there that this is what you need to do for you to continue to meet the expectations of the contract. And once they don't do that in quick order, you can get rid of them for cause.
And I think in our handbook, we have that, Rob, where we have a PIP, what is it called? The PIP, we have improvement, 30 days improvement. And I think another, I forgot, 30 days. And I think it's a 60-day term so that's there. And so I think that's where you would put that language or put that correction if it's not working, I think.
Yeah, I think that is one of the benefits that with the handbook that we already have. Some of that's already spelled out, but we could definitely call that out a little more vigorously, maybe in the contract terms. So everybody is aware.
At per handbook procedure isn't, and then the handbook of the handbook. Because we all sign that also. We sign that we read it and understand it. Michelle.
Also, I wanted to suggest that if we are looking at term language, that prior to the draft of ideas to be shared to the board, that it goes as part of a staff meeting so that the staff can discuss and review and approve what the term conditions for early removal, like what is it, a fee is it, so that they can review what those conditions would be and have a voice in that.
That's
so that would be a staff meeting.
Yeah, there will be a staff meeting before that workshop on Friday in February to do that.
All right, sounds great. Sounds like a plan. All right. So any other discussion? I
just want to clarify one point. So if we do term one, if there's an incident that's like should be instant termination, does someone just have to go on like administrative leave until we can convene and terminate them, or how does that work?
Administrative leave is actually one step that you can take prior to termination, but depending, obviously we're talking about something egregious. At that scenario, you don't have to wait. You can terminate them. I'm just going to use a really ludicrous one. An employee brings a gun on campus and shoots a window out or whatever, or threatens another employee and shoots the window that you're sitting next to, something to that effect. You don't have to wait. You can terminate them beforehand. You don't have to wait and put them on administrative leave and do a 30 to 60-day investigation and stuff.
Okay.
There are certain egregious activities that, yeah, you can still be terminated. I don't want to say immediately, but fairly quickly. And obviously, in a termination, we would definitely have legal counsel consulted with before we did that.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? All right, cool. All right, well, the second part will begin taking a look at this director evaluation process that is in your handbook. It's that, or in your packet. It starts on page 90. So what I would like to do is actually start on page 91 and just give you like a lay of the land. So we kind of understand the process. It took me a long time to figure it out, and Jennifer and Rob would also know this. It's a big document, and it is navigation at its best. So from my understanding, I think I can explain it pretty well, and I don't see that we're going to approve this tonight, but I do believe it's a stepping to maybe an approval next month. So on page 91, the Personnel Committee came up with a director's job description, and that job description took on a couple morphs. One is the existing contract job description. 2019 was the last formal job description that was written. And then John, one of the things he wanted in here was the list of competencies that that administrators have. Those are included in here, some of the expectations from the competencies. So a lot of us who took our breath away a little, that started the Personnel Committee a little late, thinking, wow, this is a large job description. And part of that is because of competencies. And also part of the situation that we have as a charter is John is both under superintendent guidelines at other districts and also a charter executive director description. So both of those and competencies are why this job description is such. So when you read through that, just be mindful of that. And John has been highly involved with this. I don't know if you want to say anything else about that, John, about the job description part.
Not too much. It is very lengthy, but I think it does capture a lot of what the job is. Okay. It is very, yeah.
Yeah, because I know Rob had said it, I'd said it too, and I was like, yo, this is like, whoa. So that's all the way through. As you can see, there's page numbering, and that job description ends on page 100. That concludes that. Now, here's what I need to say. On page 101, there's a template or how we match the job description to the goals in the professional development plan. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, but we have to provide a professional development plan yearly as part of a charter school. And it used to be because if somebody didn't hold a valid administrative license. Now, my understanding is we have to provide a professional development plan, period. And this professional development plan needs to be matched with the job description, part data-driven, so and part objectives, how we're objective meant that may not be data-driven. So one of the things you're going to see tomorrow, when I didn't want to send out all 3 documents this month. Let's just throw them all out. I'm going to give you the strategic plan document. We'll have the board packet document, and then we have our closed meeting evaluation process document. I didn't want to do all 3, so I've been throwing one little bone at a time, if you will. So we did pass the strategic plan, then we got our board packet. So tomorrow you will receive the results of the survey, the mid-year evaluation survey that was conducted from the staff. And what I did was take the job description that was developed for 2021, and wherever there was data-driven amounts, like must meet 67% of this or that, there was a question attached on the staff survey. So you'll be getting the raw data in the form of the Survey Monkey. And that Survey Monkey, when you get that raw data, the raw data will show up on the 20, I think it's better because this is a template. So you're going to see this process tomorrow when I send this. The 2021 template, or not template, 2021 professional development plan if you go down wherever there's a data, like 67% must meet this objective, it has SM for SurveyMonkey, hashtag whatever number that is, and the score. So that you're going to do two things. You're going to, one, have your hands on this document as a non-template, because that's what we've been dealing with this year. And two, you'll see the data underneath of how the scoring is. So it'll be nice because I don't have to like explain a template. You're going to have the real McCoy. So part of our, after we're done with mid-year and we're done with the next survey season, which will be out to the community, we need to set goals for John, and then that ends up on the performance, the plan that we'll do for next year. So all of these goals and these markers were from last year, and so you'll have your hands on that. So as you go through this, you see it's a preface, how to match it. So you'll see how these were matched when I send it out. So you can see from page, let me see my notes. So again, this is just kind of an opening of this. So that page 103, so we've gone through that. What does a job description match look like? You're going to see the real McCoy that we've been using this year. And you'll see as you look through the professional development plan template on page 103, we'll be using the same boxes, if you will. The same boxes appear on John's 2021. Things like general goals, professional development goal, and results and dates. The results and dates are where I put the numbers from our actual survey. So that wherever there was data, that's under there. If it's purple, I'm going to warn you, I actually said that in there, I'll remind you. There were questions that had an option of not applicable. So what I did is I took out the non-applicable because they weren't part of the data, and I made all of those purple. If it's pink, there were no NAs in there. So you're going to see the percentages either as raw data because there was no NAs, or as recalculated data because there was an NA there and shouldn't be part of the overall process. You'll see what I mean. You'll have both the SurveyMonkey to go to and this development plan that has the data underneath. And it's hard for you'll see what I mean. So the organizational goals, you'll see this year, they're under there, the instruction and assessment, they're there on page 123, and there's a list of them for his plan this year. When you go to 104, human resources and personal management, those are inputted into his 2021. You'll see those tomorrow, what they are this year with the development goal, and all the results that I have on the survey will be there also. Then there's financial management. He'll have all that. Legal and compliance management on page 104, effective communication, board authorizer, and community relationships. So this is very similar to the copy of his this year. The difference will be as a board, before we enter into next year, we have to reformulate perhaps some of the goals that might have changed from last year to this year. Many of them will stay the same. I mean, as we're working through these, John, these are everyday functions, right? I think, but some goals may change depending on the results of this particular. So that's the template, but you're not going to have a template. You'll actually have the actual data, his actually professional development plan from last year with the SurveyMonkey data. And then what's not on there as actually raw data from the SurveyMonkey, John will be providing. And I was going to ask you to do this, John. I gave John kind of a Google Doc template of everything that didn't have a percent there. He's to fill out how did he meet those objectives on his professional development plan? Because really the big thing is you need to meet these objectives. Some of them are later. Most of them are already happened or are happening. Some of them won't happen till like graduation, right? That's not happening till June. So those he can't answer to yet. I'd say at least 80% of this professional development plan has been ongoing and is measurable at this point, either with raw data or did I meet the objective? So if you would just share, so tomorrow is when you're going to get the raw data for our closed meeting. John will get it also. And then if you could be sure to just review this before Monday so we could talk about it. Okay, so this will be, and then Paula, you aren't privy to this, but the closed meetings for evaluation purposes. So, and John will get that also. So if you could just share that document, they know that goes with this professional development plan. It's not data driven. So if you could do that, John, just, I know you're working on it. I saw it. So then that explains, you'll see, you'll be matching this template. You'll be seeing what that looks like in real time this year because it's through 104. Then let's take a look at 105, page 105. 105 is something I've been doing with John all year. There's a schedule of things that the board has action to and that he has action to. So these are the kind of things that have to happen next year. But a lot of it's the same as this year. So let's take a look at January. Close meeting number 1 to discuss the results of staff survey and climate. That's what we're doing on the 25th. That was on last year, that's this year. Chair and vice chair meet with the director to discuss the results of the meeting. Dan and I will do that once we're done with our closed meeting. He and I will go talk to John about the results and any goals or whatever. Draft of a final board evaluation form. There is a form I'll be sending you from last year. That's what happened last year in March. It's 4/9/20. So you'll see that evaluation that happened last year. This year we're under that guise of last year. So the goals, the board directed goals from last year are what he's working on. So we are going to have to formulate later in our closed meeting 2 and 3, a new thing that whatever he might be, we want to feel his goals might be. And then draft the final staff and survey. So that's January, the draft the final staff and survey, community survey. I have the community survey in our board packet to discuss. That's going to be going out. So the evaluation schedule is very similar to what we've been doing all year. If you take a look, mid-year staff survey in December, you all approved those. I sent that out, etc. So again, February is going to look a lot the same. We're going to finalize these surveys. We're going to be sending them out, and we have a closed meeting, two or three, and maybe 4 if John would like. So this is a schedule for next year, but it looks a whole lot like this year. What will be different is the board, depending on what we decide from these in the evaluation process. Okay, so you'll see. So that's 105. 107 should look very familiar. These are the community survey questions. So these are samples, but we have that in the board packet. So on 107, I've presented this to the board. That will be going out at end of February, beginning of March, where we decide this goes. But they're in here to discuss as part of our meeting tonight. So these I know it's a big packet, but you've seen these. The community ones in this board number. So that's 107. And for all of you that have been on the board a year, this is probably old news to you all. So I'm speaking this language mostly to Jennifer, Rob, and Paula, who probably haven't seen these things. So even though they were part of, how do we all, us newbies, end up on the personnel committee? I don't know, but we've been doing just fine, haven't we? So all the way through 109 are sample community. They're already in your board packet with a few extra. Rob, I did the same suggestion that you made with the community or with the director questions to separate the high expectations of EAs of this and that. I separated those out too, this particular survey. So those look real familiar, nothing new. All right, taking a look at 111 or 110. Again, we looked through those in November, didn't we? I had those all ready for you. We discussed them. People wanted changes. I made them. And that's what went out, the staff survey questions. Those are the ones we approved that you have SurveyMonkey for results when I send that out tomorrow. Okay, so that's not new. It's just a lot of blah, blah, blah. This is the main thing is we've done this together. We've been kind of going through all this together. John and I, for the first time ever having a professional development plan. I think this is your first time you've been through this at all at MSA with me. And so this is to help every board. Some will have been seasoned at this, some won't. Some aren't ding dongs who are the chair first year like me. So there will be a chair that's like already been through this. And so it's to now present to MSA a nice, equitable professional development plan that starts and finishes thoroughly every year. So then those board questions you've already seen, we've done that. We take a look at an individual board evaluation document. This is new to me. I have not done this yet. This happens when we get to the closed meeting number 2. So I'm about 80% fuzzy from now on. I was 95 before. By the way, I was 50 when I started personnel committee. So I feel like I've grown so much. I haven't done this part. You old board members, you had this process last year, didn't you? So this is, I will be doing this. Probably not as good as Lisa because I'm 80, but I'll be 90. I don't like to make 80% grades. I would be a good student for that. So this process will happen after the board, closed board meeting number 2, once we get community feedback and we have all of that. So that process is listed. I kind of get it, but I'm going to get, so we basically take all those, this year's data-driven items and perhaps John's, his objectives, how he met them, that isn't data-driven by a survey. And we put those in and say how, as a board, did that all pan out in our opinion. So that's a closed meeting number 2. I think if you looked on your list, that doesn't come up till March, I think. Okay, so that's a lot. Again, every section is a sample. This is a sample. I'll be a little more on my shtick, hopefully. So 21, see, we go through all of this. This is a big document, just so there's lots of examples. And I needed them. So thank you, board from last year. You all did that. This all funnels into page 123, where we have recommendations for salary, for a contract at the end of the day, depending on all the rating that we do. I think it's March, or March is when it happens, and then March is where the director gets a, that's the first, he's the first to get a contract, and then teachers and staff get next. All right. So now on page 124, our individual board evaluations. This pairs up, I believe. It's almost like it's in backwards order, but as you know, and I share this disability, it's my own data privacy. I have dyslexia, so it just seemed like that should flow first. But this is where we take a look at the evaluation template, and there's a document I'm sending tomorrow, 4/9/20. That was last year's, for those of you who were on the board who went through this process. There was percentages up top, then there was strengths that John had and board directed goals that John had. And this is what we are under, this is what his whole professional development plan was built on last year, in addition to other things. So then we rate individual, all of us rate it. You'll see there's 9 categories, and each without names, of course, and how he was rated by each board member. And so that's what that data is in the beginning. So that goes on with examples 127. This doesn't happen till later, so I don't have to be at 90%, just saying. But I hope you're starting to see this flow, right? We've been doing this together as a team. Cumulative board evaluation template compiled by the chair. This is like on page 129, if you would turn to that. 129 is what you will see last year's results. So if you see on 129, this is where the chair, I come in and there are, like for example, let's say meets all elements of director's job description. That was one item, either last year or before. And every board member, there's 9 boxes. You get ownership of 1 box. How did you rate him? 3, 2, and 1. We're now going to a 3, 2, 1, except for John's climate survey. That is different, but the actual attachment to his professional development plan is rated 1, 2, 3 throughout. And so you'll see how that is. And then basically an overall 77.78. However, this is just an example. And that's what you'll see tomorrow, is how that all piled down for you board members from last year. So this is all coming close, meeting 2 and 3. We can take a breath and not worry about that right now because we're acting on this year's, but we need to present this for next year. So this is, I think, what you worked on in May and June. Is that right, John? This is kind of, it got approved, I think, the month we all got on the board, I believe. It was like, yeah. So all of this is driving that professional development plan. All of it is driving next year's, depending on this year. And finally, see, it's a big document, all examples. Notice every single box: legal compliance and management, effective communication, board authors, whatever box there was, these have each of these, you would be voting on each of these. And I don't know how long it takes. And I don't 100% know the process, but I promise you I will. And boom, end of year director evaluation from here, 135. It's like you gave birth. We've been on this page for about 30 pages now. It gives birth to boom, page 135. That's end of year director evaluation. I apologize. That's what you'll see tomorrow from last year. That's really one of the things in our mid-year. You'll see in the mid-year evaluation, all we need to do is strengths, board directed goals for right now, because we're still in this season of this year's. We're not going to create new board directed goals right now. We wait till the end, our next season together, but we'll be getting together to discuss these results. Mid-year, we'll look at strengths, some of the goals, how did you meet them from last year? And then we won't be doing the top part till closed meeting 2 and 3. All right, so that is really at 5:54 too. I'm pretty happy about that. That's the tour, if you will, the tour of this big old gargantuous document. And so you will be having your hands on his professional development plan. You'll have your hands on the raw data from SurveyMonkey, and any data driven. I have put those in the professional development plan because it should all flow nice. And then John will present you the non-data driven with his Google sheet, where how he met his objectives of things that we didn't measure from the staff survey. How does that? Any questions?
So for the meeting on Monday, the closed meeting, we just need to review the materials you're sending to us tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll guide that process. So all you need to know, that's what you'll have to do. And I'll have them in order and I'm trying to explain them. Yes. So this is this year's professional development. Yes. Gina.
Is this, well, one, I understand it way more now. So thank you, Annie, for running through that. And two, I don't know if this is like the time to bring up the, just something from like the strategic plan, just talking about the mission and vision. I just didn't know if this was the time to bring up in the job description, should we have something about the mission and vision in there, like meets the mission or like supports the mission and vision? I just noticed that it's not really like specifically identified in the job description. That was just like a side note, but I just didn't know when to mention it. And so I wanted to bring it up right now. That was just like a little piece.
Yes, you know, this is a living document. We haven't approved it yet, correct? So if you would like that, Gina, up for discussion, we'll if you would like to send me where you're seeing this, where it's not there, could you? And then I can include it on the final doc that we will probably approve for the process, and include that on the actual job description. So we'll figure out a place. And then maybe I can make it in italics so people know that's different than what you read tonight. And then we can discuss and approve because we want to approve this whole process for next board meeting. Well, we've actually discussed this. This is a big one to get off our backs because I think I'm the largest document that got placed in here, like 44, 45 pages. So I was thinking, uh-oh, Dan's going to be giving me the stink eye. That was a 45-page document I slipped in there. No, I just thought this would be a great time. All right, so we are about at 6. So, well, Rob and Jennifer, did that explain? You've been part of personalities. We were like deer in the headlights. Did that help a little bit on going through that?
Yeah, I mean, it helped that I was on the personnel committee, right, Jennifer? I mean, to see it and then go through it again.
Yeah. All right. So expect that data from me tomorrow, if you will, for the closed meeting. And then John, if you would share you can just make a copy and share it with everybody. You know, don't put any edits in there. Don't let us edit it. No comments, nothing. It is who it is. The only thing I did see missing is there are some time sensitive issues that I asked you, like, was it done on time? Was objective met on time? And that's missing from your tab button. So if you could just say if there was something, you know, I think that's important to know, were things done on time, even with this crazy year. That would be good. Okay, any other questions? I say we break and come back for our business end at 6:15. Thank you very much, board.
CO2 night.
So Annie and Michelle, I'm having some pet problems in my house and I might have to go downstairs. So I don't know how I should work with that. Should I just like dip out and expect you to see me? It would only be like 3 minutes, but
Well, you talk about, but not internet. You're talking about just personal things having to.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, that's fine. Just put off your you're fine with that.
I mean,
Jeannie.
I was just gonna walk away, but I know like technically I'm not there. So I didn't know if I had to be like, Gina left the meeting. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
Well, that depends. Are you still going to have your headphones on?
No, because I don't even have them on right now. But I would just run downstairs and come back up in like 2 minutes. But
Okay, yeah, no, totally. I can always just make, well, the thing is like even during regular meetings, if somebody has to go to the bathroom, they get up for a sec to go to the bathroom. You know,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not logging off or anything.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
can still hear you guys downstairs, so maybe that's not a problem.
So you're part of it.
Okay, cool.
I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm like, wow. Cool. We'll get. Aya's here. Cool. Hi, Aya. Never saw. All I see is Aya's iPhone. Part of me's like, what does Aya look like? No, I'm only kidding.
Ooh, it's a mystery.
I know. I would be mystery in the back. For sure.
Oh my goodness, I'm reading an old school, well, I guess technically it's true crime, but I started reading In Cold Blood. I like know nothing about the story, but I knew it was like a really good old school true crime. Oh,
Yeah. Get scared.
Oh heck yeah.
Oh,
I like to read before bed.
yeah. I'll watch reruns of Pokemon. That's me right there.
Hey,
Right.
Pokemon has got some solid stuff.
I know. I even have my hat. Remember, I go to Valley Fair with my Pokemon hat. Everyone knew who I was when I was doing the field trips. Yeah. I love it how you morph into stuff. I feel like that's been pretty much this year. Let's just morph into this. Let's morph into that. All of us are playing that game right now, and the kids. And the kids are out with us. That is for sure. Well, let's see. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 of us, 6 of us. So I think we're going to just march on. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:16. If Paula, would you kindly read our mission and vision, please?
Yes.
Oh, did I catch you off guard? You can always assign it to one of us.
Okay, so our mission, we provide accelerated curricula in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science. Our vision to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence that creates well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens.
Thank you. Always sounds so much better coming out of our students, right? Love it. All right, I'm going to take a roll call at this time, and hopefully John will be there. So Dan Ellingston.
Here.
Cody Knight.
Here.
Michelle Krakowski.
Here.
Gina Albers.
Here.
Adam Bartz.
Here.
Rob Kruger.
Here.
Jennifer Bartle.
Here.
Maggie Berggraf.
Here.
Paula Capo.
Here.
John Garecki.
Here. Here.
Sorry. And then
Yeah.
Jenny Abs. Jenny Abs seems to be absent a lot. I'm not sure if you and I need to talk about do we keep her on or not, but we are all present as a board, so no absences. I would like to motion to approve item 3, which is the agenda. Do I have a second?
This is Gina. I'll second.
Okay. And discussion. I would like to place something under item 12G. That would be discuss and appoint BOD election committee that time of year again. So discuss and appoint BOD election committee under 12G. we have any discussions on that? Okay, I will roll call a vote. Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneid,
Yes.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Barth,
Yes.
Rob Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas, yes. And motion carries to place that. All right. No conflict of interest statement at this time. There were no open forum letters. So just to let you know that. So item 4, no open forum letters. 5, and by the way, I just want to make this statement to you, Michelle. I forgot, I was reading the minutes and noticed I had forgotten to give you the name, and I will be mindful of that to give you names of those people. So I noticed a question mark.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So item number 5, approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? December 21st, 2020 minutes.
This
This is Rob. I
is
so moved.
Dan. Okay.
Okay,
I
Rob.
can second.
Okay,
This is
Rob.
Dan.
Thank
Beat you
you.
to it, Danny.
All right.
No problem.
Is there any discussion on the minutes for the 2021? And I did have one item, and I don't know how important it is, but I just wanted to say it. So the Board of Director workshop and regular minutes, that first page stated that it was in Building A, and remotely was where the actual location was for that one, the access for the community, and that did not have, it was Building C lobby and remotely. So that, if you could change that, please, on those minutes. That was on page 4. Any other
Are you going
situations?
to spell that name correctly on the minutes? That had the question mark?
Yes. So you're talking about the parent under the, on what page is that?
Yeah, the open forum parent. I'm sorry, I didn't mark that. I just knew, I just remember we had the question mark there for the spelling of that name.
Yes, because, yeah, we have an agreement that I will send Michelle the names of the parents so we get them proper, and I forgot to do that last
But we
week.
might as well fix it for our minutes, right?
Yes, and so that was taken care of. Perfect.
Oh, it
And
was
that
taken
good.
care of.
Oh,
Oh,
well,
okay.
it was, the spelling was correct, yes.
Yeah, good.
And also it was Building C lobby for instead of Building A room 88. Any other comments on the minutes or changes to
Can
the
I
minutes?
just confirm the motion and second because they were simultaneous? So who was the motion and who was the second?
I think I was first and Dan was second.
Yes.
Okay.
I was number 2. Yep. Second.
I have a comment about on page 12. In the under G, where kind of in the middle of that big paragraph, it says, if the levels stay at the current level, then there can't be practice on campus. If basketball started, it would only be practice. So I don't know what that meant. It seems like it's contradicting itself.
That was, that's from Ms. Froberg. So for that, depending on the levels of COVID, they may be able to have some practices from the Minnesota State High School League. So at the time, the levels were too high to have practices on campus. And then even if the levels went below, it would still currently be just practices. But I'll check with Ms. Froberg.
Do you see how it's kind of confusing? I was reading it and I was like, what? Is there practice? Or
John, do you have any clarification? I think you sat down with the 75 AD limit. You both decided on that, or
yeah.
Do you have any comment on that, John?
Or just a way to make it more clear?
Well, that's I'm trying to do that right now. The problem was at the time of the meeting, what's in there, even though it reads kind of odd, it was actually accurate. And things have changed, but
Yeah, I would like some clarification on that because I know we've had some concern about the, what is it, the skiing, Nordic practice, right? And the fact that we have over 25 athletes, but currently only one coach. And so that's affecting practice. So I would like clarification to follow up on Jennifer's question there. Where are we with that and how are we finding ways? Because it seems to me that there's got to be a way to get somebody else there so that the students can practice, not just official, fully licensed coaches. I don't believe that that's the requirement to have fully licensed coaches,
but
25-1. So
I guess I'm looking at the minutes and what was discussed from the board meeting, not what's transpired since the meeting. So, Rob, to answer your question, I don't think that pertains to what's in the meeting because some of the additional guidance came out after the meeting was done.
Okay.
So that's changed. But at the time of this meeting, what's in there, the guidance from the state is actually accurate. And we did come up with a rate of 75 for outdoor activities.
Did that answer your question, Jennifer? Do you need it clear? We will, is some of this that's happened past in your director's report, John, that we can have that conversation, Rob?
Yeah, I'm looking at the minutes. If the levels stay at the.
What about if I said if the county COVID, the county COVID rate?
I don't know if the sentence that's kind of messing this up is if basketball started, it would only be practice.
So I think that means like if levels decrease to allow basketball to start.
I would put something to that effect if the COVID numbers dropped and basketball started, it would only be practice.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Something to clarify it a little more.
All right. Is there any other discussion on the minutes?
I just had one thing. Liz Wine, she actually forwarded myself and John some of the criteria. So I can send those out to everyone, I think, if you don't reply back to me, right? And I think that's how that works. So I can just forward that on to the board so you guys can kind of see some of the criteria she uses to kind of evaluate the boards. And it's kind of like check or minus. Do they do this? Do they not do that? So I'll forward that on. But I just didn't see that it was in there. But she did send it to myself and John.
That'd be terrific. All right. Any other discussions? All right, we will roll call those changes then. Dan Ellingston?
Yes.
Cody Schneid?
Yes.
Michelle Krakowski?
Yes.
Gina Albers?
Yes.
Adam Barth?
Yes.
Robert Kruger?
yes.
Jennifer Bartle?
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff?
Yes.
Annie Cardenas, yes. Motion carries. All right, chair's report. By the way, we don't have minutes, just to let everyone know, for the retreats. Those are something we didn't have to have minutes for and written, John said. So just to let you know why those are not in here. Also, just
I did take them. If you want a copy of my notes informally,
correct.
Just email me and I can send you.
Yes, which she did. And I think Terry might have posted those. I'm not sure if she posted those website, but chairs.
Put them in there.
Yes, but beg your pardon?
I'm pretty sure I put them in the folder.
Yeah. All right, chair's report. Basically, we started off with the different two types of contracts that we'll be looking at for all staff next year. John went over both of them. We were looking at a timed contract, and we'll be having some samples of those next board meeting. And then I led the board through the Personnel Committee's submission for the complete evaluation process for the director, pages 90 for 136. We muddled through pretty successfully, I would say. So that was great. Hopefully you're able to attend and see that. So we will be not discussing that on tonight's board agenda because we discussed it in workshop. And that is it for me. John, your director's report, please.
I hate these mice. They don't, that cursor never goes where you want it to go. The director's report, which starts on page 14. I guess the one thing I really want to just, congratulations to everybody at MSA, the entire community. We do have the highest ACT composite score in the state again. This is marks, if I remember right, 4 out of the last 5 years that MSA has been the top. We increased our score from last year was 27.4, and this year we're 28.3, so almost an entire 1 point improvement from last year. Just for your, for your reference, Nova Classical, who happens to be our rival academically, finished with 27.4. So they can try again next year, I guess, competitively speaking anyway. The one other thing that you should be aware of that's not in my report, because over the weekend, I got a call, well, actually it was an email Sunday evening that there was going to be a MDE call at 8 a.m. on Martin Luther King Day, Monday. So I spent most of my Monday yesterday working on the MDE vaccination announcement that was released. And MSA was selected to have 3 vaccinations. And then we had to produce a bunch of protocol and how we were going to notify the staff that this event was going to happen, and then the individual staff that were selected to receive the vaccinations. And then there was, MDE set out some guidelines as to how we could go about coming up with our vaccination list. The goal, at least from MDE, what they're giving out right now is every week, at least this is what has been released, it's subject to change, but every week now, we will be receiving additional vaccines for sign up. I wouldn't hold my breath on that just because of, after watching the rollout of how this went, it's kind of a, let's just put it this way, it's kind of challenging to roll something out in short period of time very effectively and efficiently. At our directors, the max directors call, we spent about an hour talking about all the troubles that were encountered in the rollout of this, and how the development of your vaccination list and how that was done, and just the amount of difficulties that all the schools were having. So probably could have been waited, maybe second guessing, wait 24 hours and maybe try to roll it out. I know that all the vaccine time slots have been filled as of about 20 minutes ago. So at that end, it's a success from the state point of view, but there are a lot of schools that never got their employees to get an appointment. The 3 that we have, I had verified from MDE this afternoon that they did fill out and were in the appointment queue. So whether they get vaccinated or not, I don't know. I just know that our 3 employees have done all that was required to fill our 3 slots. We don't know how many more we're going to get in the future, other than they've said, MDE that is, has said that we're going to get more, and this is kind of the route that they're going to go to get vaccinations. To put this all in perspective, if you do a little math, if it continues at the current rate it will take about 4 months to get all of the educators in Minnesota vaccinated. So I don't know if that's the timeline that MDE has or not, but that's kind of where we're at with the information that we have at this time. Very fluid situation, and it was kind of just thrown at not just MSA, but all schools in the state yesterday morning. So I guess stay tuned with the vaccinations, but we are getting some educators vaccinated. And we do have some staff members that have already been vaccinated because of other positions that they hold outside of the school. So the other part of that, then kind of transitioning just a little bit kind of to what we just discussed a little bit about in the past minutes from last meeting. We do have students on campus. They actually started showing up Sunday. We had basketball practice in the gym. Mrs. Froberg was there and is there all week to make sure that they're following the proper COVID protocols. But you know, she's tickled pink because there's students on campus and they're just so happy to be here. Compliance with the protocols has not been an issue at all. We will start WIN Fridays again next Friday. We won't do them this Friday because of the shortened week. Next week is our first 5-day week, so we will start WIN Fridays up again. The one thing I just want to make sure the board is aware, when we approved the COVID levels, the stipulation was that there was no positive staff members. And I'm taking the interpretation of that to mean staff members that are involved with that particular activity. In the case of basketball, if we would have a basketball coach positive, we would have that group would not be meeting on campus until the coach was no longer positive and passed the isolation. The reason I want to do that is because we do have a staff member that has tested positive, but that staff member has not been on campus for over 2 months. And to cancel activities because we have a staff member that's not even on campus, to me, doesn't make any sense to eliminate, or tell students they can't be on campus. So my interpretation for that requirement of no staff, no testing positive, is for the staff that are involved in that activity. Putting it in the terms of like a WIN Friday, obviously if we have a staff member that's positive, they're not going to hold a WIN Friday activity on campus until they've gone through the isolation protocol and are clear to come back on campus. Questions?
Well, I think Rob, on page 16, where it talks about high school assistant director, it talks about winter sports and talks about all of that with the Minnesota's high school league. Is there any other questions you wanted to tie in? That's probably where in his report, hopefully he can answer to that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I just wanted to get some clarification for parents and students about the practice schedules. And so we had the student and parent that were writing about the Nordic and the fact that they have more than 25 students, but only one coach. And so that was eliminating things. What are we doing to try to help mitigate those situations, as opposed to being very rigid and saying, oh, well, there's nothing we can do? Because it seems to me that sometimes there is something we can do. So I'm just wondering how we're working through that.
So in trying to be very careful on how I select my words, because I don't want to identify anybody particularly, but the guidance by MDE and the State High School League is that if you have a practice, you cannot have any more than pods of 25. So, the Nordic ski team has more than 25. So they have to have 2 separate pods when they when they practice. So they've, and this is all of this has been worked out between Ms. Froberg and the coaches. Unfortunately, one of the coaches is not able to come on campus because of their situation. So the coaches, when they talked with Mrs. Froberg, came up with a rotation for students to be on campus with a coach supervising. The coaches felt it was, from what I understand anyway, it was that they felt fairly uncomfortable having a parent, a non-staff member running a practice. So the only way that they saw to meet the safety guidelines and to feel comfortable leading the team was to break the group into 2 pods and alternate practices. So, and that's not to say that the pod that wasn't practicing for a particular day would have no practice. They would have a virtual practice where the other coach would be taking them through a virtual practice. So they'd still practice. It just wouldn't be on campus or at wherever they decided to meet for that day, which is probably off campus. I believe they're meeting at Beaver Creek sometimes. And so they split it up into 2 pods and they're alternating. As far as, I guess that's as much detail as I'm aware of and can really address. That's the decision that the coach and Ms. Froberg thought was the safest, was to break them up into 2 pods and have them alternating the days that they'd meet in person, and the days they weren't in person, they would meet virtually with the other coach. So they'd still practice every day. It just wouldn't be in person every day.
Okay, and we feel that that's doing everything we can for the students, everything in our power.
Unless well, we could hire additional coaches if we could find them, or hire additional staffing.
Well, don't we have some other coaches in other sports that would be willing to come in to run? I mean, again, there's difference between practices, conditioning, those kinds of things that other people can do outside their expertise, as well as, ancillary ability to do drills and those kinds of things with minimal, I'm not saying full contact football, but with the volleyball coach, but certainly those that have degrees and, coaching certificates and or athletic degree, teaching, I'm losing my words here. Physical education, teaching degrees, those kinds of things. I understand not any parent who's willing to stand there. That doesn't make sense. But it seems to me that maybe, especially in these special circumstances, that we could do everything we can to get kids practicing. I'm not saying we're not doing that. I'm just asking, are we doing the best we can to meet the needs of these kids?
Having not been privy to what was discussed between Mrs. Froberg and the Nordic coaches, I guess I can't really answer that. I would have to follow up after talking with Mrs. Froberg to find out what was discussed. I do know that there are some staff members, well, we have one parent that's a staff member that is fairly involved in the Nordic ski, or at least has been. I don't know if that person was reached out or even discussed as an option, but that's something I can follow up on to see if that was a discussion.
Yeah, please do. It just seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong and others can chime in here, but we have an athletic director, we have those kinds of folks. That seems to me where they step up, especially when, some of the other items on their bucket list aren't as busy because they don't have students on campus. And so anyway, those are just my requests based on some of the feedback I've been hearing from parents and students. Thank you.
Well, yeah, John, I was just wondering too, was the one coach can't come in ever, or did you say they can't come in because of something? Like, is that a Nordic coach that can't come in? I'm confused. Like one of the coaches can't come in?
The Nordic coach, due to they can conduct virtual, virtual practices. At this point in time, they're unable to come in and do person to person.
Well, that limits the 25, how many you can break out.
So you have one pot of 25.
Yeah, okay. I just think for me, it'd be nice for people not to be surprised that, like, to have all this explained ahead of time. Like, this is what's going on, this is why it's going on, instead of surprising and then, things happen where we're, they're disappointed. It'd be nice to kind of stop the disappointment through communication so everyone understands why things are being done, how they're being done, and what's going on. That's just my thought.
And to that point, I think there was some language that was put on the announcement that was not quite as accurate as it should have been. And when that was cleared up, I think that cleared up some of the questions that were coming out of that.
I know, and I think a lot of it is just we're all riding on hope right now, right?
Right.
I mean, 3, I'm like, we're 1B, we get vaccines, YOLO, roll, and then it's like, what, 3? And that's nobody's fault. It's just we're riding on this hope that I'm like, gosh, I want hope. We want hope like we need oxygen right now. That's coming from a chemistry teacher.
But I guess the happy news is we have students on campus. The girls and boys basketball teams are on campus. Some of the FRC, FTC, I can't remember which one, they had practices on Sunday. So the robotics team is getting ramped up. So through those groups and the Nordics, we've got almost 100 students on campus or participating in activities. So any parents that are listening, look for opportunities to get your student on campus through activities. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be MSA activities. It can be, other activities as well, non-athletic. But I would anticipate with the Win Fridays coming up that we're going to have, that number of students being on campus is only going to increase.
And then may I ask kind of a weird question? How many over 25 is the team? How many total students are there?
Oh, the Nordic team, if I remember right, the last count was 32, but that was sometime last week.
Okay. I just wanted to know how close we were to the number.
and the basketball teams are under 25, so that they can bring them all in and practice at the same time. The one thing is the games, the limitations on games and the number of students that can be, or actually number of people on the bench, is less than it typically has been in the past. So that also is a limiting factor of, can only have, if I remember right, it's 13 people on the bench, and that includes coaches and managers and everybody.
All right, any more discussion on that? The director's report?
I have a question about, when we're granted vaccines, how are we prioritizing? I know you don't want to give out personal information, but are we trying to get the staff that are hesitant to come back on campus if we go in person? Or
no, the MD gave some guidelines as to what the priorities lists are. And the first one is those 55 and older is top priority. And then I can go into a little bit of detail. Then the funny thing is they gave the idea of using health criteria, but then they don't want you collecting any health information. So because of HIPAA. So what I did in the development of that list, I took those staff members that said they would not be comfortable coming back on campus from our last survey, and I put them in a group. They making an assumption that there was some rationale, whether it's, you know, family or themselves, that getting a vaccine would make them more likely to come on campus. So that was included. The area that they teach in, not specific area, but the departments that they teach in, is an area, and I did it broadly, like special ed, office area, and then all general ed teachers. So basically those are the three kind of bigger areas. And the big, the segregator was the birth dates, because you have to have some way to prioritize 1 through 54. And when there was a tie or some, there are 2 yeses in a column, I went with birth dates.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting scraps anyway if it's only 3. So I say rock, paper, scissors, John, rock, paper, scissors. No.
Well, and to be honest, it's a terrible thing for, you know, for MDE to lay on anybody, because, you know, what came out from today's meeting is, you know, why do, you're putting a lot of responsibility on the directors of the schools and the superintendents, because you could literally be making a life and death situation, a decision on who gets it and who doesn't. And, you know, there are a lot of directors at that meeting that are about ready to quit because of a lot of the things that are being laid on them that they never signed up for. And
yeah, well, that's our,
just, you know, COVID doesn't care, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's got to be a hard call for everybody to make. Three vaccines on to give out to. Did you say 54 people?
Yeah, so we have 54 staff members, and I'm just going to say that on record. You know, I decided that I was going to make that list, and I explained the list to a couple of people, but I didn't want them to be part of, you know, who goes on top of who. I did that because I didn't want to cause a ton of division. If somebody wants to be mad at me and not anybody else. That's the job of this chair, take the heat. So if somebody's mad about where they got put on the list, even though I can't share that list, I'll take the heat for it, let everybody else coexist as happily as possible.
all right. Any other comments for director? All right, Ms. Paula, would you like to give us a student representative update, please?
So the Student Advisory Council, right now we're working on Black History Month and Women's History Month advisory lessons. And currently right now we're working on the unknown historical figures for Black History Month, and we should be getting that out by next Monday. And then we'll move into working on a section for Black art and Black identity. And those sections, we're hoping for more student involvement there, where there'll be students can feature their own art and possibly have an opportunity for students to voice what Black identity means to them. And then we'll be moving on later in February on Women's History Month.
Very nice. Thank you, Paula. I think some of the ones they come up with for advisory have been tremendous. All right, we're on item number 9, reports from board committees and task force. So again, hopefully you went through the very detailed notes, and we will do questions only at this point, except for finance, approval of the finances. So academics, any questions for academics? All right, moving on with annual fund.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mute off for a second there. more of a comment than a question, and I'm curious if there was discussion about that. I'm just can't believe the PSAT scores. I mean, that's just unbelievable. How the 10th grade numbers went so far up. That's well above several standard deviations, it seems to me. So do we have any explanation? I mean, and beating last year's 10th graders who those 11th graders beat the year before, right? I mean, theirs went up too. I mean, how do we explain that?
I would be interested to see dig down a little bit more into the data, but I know across the board for the last actually 3 years, multiple departments have made a point of adding in practice testing strategy for example, ACT, PSAT, how do you read the kinds of questions? How do you manage your time? Let's do some practice questions. We've added those in periodically. I'm going to start doing those with the 10th graders for the ACT again next month. Or at the end of this month, depending on timing. So I don't know if that is a direct factor or no, but that is one thing I know that has been a focus of the last 3 years. I know across the board departments have done things with it. And I know we've been really public about ACT prep and different things that this, is made available to the students. I know that information gets sent out pretty regularly too, but I'd be interested in the micro data, getting in not just the individual the larger content, but the questions. I really would like to see that data. It'd be interesting.
I would as well. I mean, it's just fascinating to me.
It's wonderful. We see on page 21 for our viewers, 58% met both benchmarks in 2019 up to 84. And I also, Rob, one of the things we teach is POE, process of elimination. So anytime I give a test, I always say you're stuck. And it's a common ACT, SAT, trick. Okay, what can you, now you're down to 50% if there's 4 items that you have to choose from. There's now a process of elimination. So a lot of us are always thinking that, and by the way, our kids are just good test takers. That's just, you're starting with that baseline. So,
right. But why would you see such a change? I mean, the school's been excellent for quite a while. I mean, that's just an unbelievable change. And I guess my point here is we need to figure out a way to share this, right? When we're trying to end the achievement gap, our students are diverse and we have numbers like that. What can we share in the broader community about ending that achievement gap when we have scores like this in a diverse school? We can continue to celebrate what we're doing, but there's got to be a way that we can share this.
Yeah, I don't know how we'd probe it more myself.
I could be wrong, but I thought I remember Kirsten saying not all students came on campus to take the test this year either. It was optional. So this isn't the full grade. I think that's right. I was taking notes, so you have to ask Michelle, but I feel like that's something she said.
Then that could certainly explain it, right? People that took the opportunity, there's an opportunity cost there for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. All right, on to AFC, annual fund. Any questions for AFC? Okay. Communications. Do you have any questions for me? Communication.
I have a question for that actually. Under item 3, it says any platform updates or procedural updates for the year that need to be communicated for safety, for staff, safety, etc. It's stated that there is a committee working on this, and I guess I was just curious which one.
I'm not sure. So I'm not sure. I don't take notes at that one. I'm not sure what the committee is. I know I can find out.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions for communications? All right. School expansion possibility. Oh, by the way, personnel, we met twice last month, if you remember. So we meet tomorrow. So we'll have those ready for you. We might even have 2 February's a short month, but we did not meet. School expansion possibilities. Policy. Any questions for policy? Although we have policies we'll be discussing also in separate. All right. We will move to the approval and therefore discussion of the financials. So we were on item 9, financials. I'd like to motion to approve the financials. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second, okay. And discussion. So if Cody, you have anything to add or any discussion points for financials before we approve them?
The biggest thing I think, we have all that data there. We are meeting with Dustin. I can't remember the exact date. I think the 21st. Is that right, John? To go over the budget, because our budget was formulated more on a traditional school year, and we've had, not had a traditional school year, and some things are coming in under budget. So far only one thing's over budget. So we're just going to kind of look and see get an idea of where we are and kind of redo the budget. So other than that, the financial statements are all there with our, and we've been adding our credit card statement as well. So we can show that.
That's really great. Very transparent. Very, very good. Any other questions? Yeah. Any other questions? These are pretty streamlined. All right.
Also, since
maybe it's not code.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Cody. Maybe it's not money related, but when you were talking, I was thinking of that tutor.com. How have people been taking advantage of that one at all? Or
yeah. So we met last month. So what we're doing is we're having, and I'm sure the teachers here will know about this, is the teachers are recommending students. Then we as I guess we're a task force because we're not actually part of the board, but I'm on it. We're going through and kind of looking at the situations and then allocating hours. The first rollout, we gave the parents like 3 or 4 days to respond, and we didn't get that great of a response, and we're just not sure if there wasn't enough time or if parents are just not seeing the emails or they thought it was an ad and it wasn't. We're not completely sure. So this time we met right before the winter break and did the next round, and we were going to give more time for parents to get back to us because they actually have to sign like a contract so that we can release their information to tutor.com. So and one of the members of that task force has a student that was recommended. So she was able to give us feedback from the parent end of it. So
how did that go?
She saw the email because she was looking for it. We're meeting again, I think. We're meeting again on the 29th to do the next round of allocations.
It sounds like it's still kind of early days, but are we getting kind of what we had hoped, which was a little bit extra? I mean, like this one instance, did the student get the tutoring they needed?
I think from the small pool we had, we saw some improvements. Then we had questions about if students are showing improvement with tutoring, but their grades are stable, or their grades are up. Are they going to be stable if we take the tutoring away? So we are still looking into that, and of course we'll have all the answers by the end of the school year, and then it hopefully won't matter. So, that's all I can report on that.
Yeah. And there's a process, Dan. So we have to fill out, it comes out every 2 months, fill out recommendations from our end. There's criteria for those recommendations. I've signed up a couple kids. So there's been more than a couple. We've had several rounds now. So I think our third round.
No, that's good. And Cody, Cody kind of alluded to, we have some things we're not spending. In my mind, I was thinking this tutoring is something that we wouldn't have had budgeted, but I like that we're doing it. So I was just curious, is that helping, right? I mean, I'm still supportive of us doing it. I was just curious, and maybe we have to wait some more time. That's fine as well. Yeah.
From the couple students we've had, I think there has been improvements. We'll see what happens next round. We're hoping to see names disappear. Well, I'm sorry. We don't see names. We just see only one person sees the names. Everything's that information's confidential, but we're hoping that that person sees names disappearing.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm gonna go ahead. Any other discussions?
Before we approve the financials, I do want to put out, so I'm doing the finance training next month. If anyone has questions about things they've, that they want me to address in the training, can they get back to me in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
So I can make sure to incorporate that into my notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and roll call vote to approve the financials. Dana Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneid,
Yes.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bart,
Yes.
Rob Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas, yes. All right, item 9 carries. Financial. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda 10A, policy 103?
This is Adam. So moved.
Do I have a second?
This is Gina. I'll second.
All right, any discussion on policy 103? All right, I will roll call vote to approve them. Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneid,
Yes.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bart,
Yes.
Rob Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas. That is that's motion carries. Consent agenda 10A. All right, we are entering into the old and unfinished business. We have 2 items. We'll start with 11A for policy 522. Do I have a motion to move the policy 522? I'll first on that. Do I have a second?
This is Rob. I second it.
Oh, I guess let's discuss. That's right. We were going to discuss this, weren't we? And not maybe. Yes. Well, I have discussed here, not approved. I always make John tweak it because my head just goes there. But at this point, we're actually just discussing it. And I know where we ended, I believe, with policy 522 is discussing which of the 2 forms, the shorter or the longer. And maybe a motion comes out of that. So I'm going to open it up for discussion.
It's been a few weeks. So I just was it the lawyer's recommendation to go with the shorter one and then create our own, why can't I think of the word? Policies, procedures.
Yeah,
Was that what the
it wasn't
lawyer-
their specific recommendation. They said if we're going to, because we gave them everything we worked on, and one of them was a longer
Right.
procedural document, and one of them was the so we gave them everything. They said if you're going to use the procedural document, this longer one, that just use the short version.
Okay.
So if you want to use that like really long, because the procedural document is almost identical to policy.
Right. And
So if we use that,
the reason for that is because then you don't have to bring it to the board every time you need to tweak a sentence or a wording here. You can do that separately and it doesn't become a big board. Am I correct?
yes. So it would.
Okay.
So then you would have less likelihood of needing to do a consent agenda for a red line.
Okay.
But for this policy, I would recommend that changes always go to the board. Personal, like my feedback personally, for this particular policy, I don't think that it's a good plan to have something outside board purview just because of the implications long-term about sexual harassment and what can happen with that.
Okay.
But that's just me. Y'all can totally outrule me. That's fine.
Well, we also talked about that it was the longer form had a grievance procedure, that we could also take that grievance procedure and make it applicable to other things too. It's not like it's that was embedded in this particular policy, but we could also have a grievance policy very similar for generic. Is that right, Michelle? Is that what I think we discussed that as if we decided?
Yes, we have to post the grievance procedure for this specific one, you know, like with included within it. But then yes, we could have a more generic grievance procedure that closely mimics and mirrors what is in here, with the exception of a couple mandatory things that this one requires. But then yes, you could apply it. Because I think I remember, John, you had mentioned one of the things when we're filling out, is it the annual report when they ask about our grievance procedures? It was some report, something where they were asking about it.
Yeah, some of it is every year we do a bond renewal process, and they want to see where's your grievance procedures. The one thing that Ratwick did recommend, though, is you only have one grievance procedure, not two. So if you're going to have the grievance procedure embedded in this document, this is the grievance procedure you follow. You don't pass another one, because then the language has to be identical, or you open yourself up for litigation. So you only want one grievance procedure. So if it's either embedded in your policy, or your policy is short and you have a grievance procedure that's applicable to whichever policies need a grievance procedure. And that kind of goes back to what Maggie was saying. You know, if it's embedded in the policy, then any changes has to go through the board, which, you know, Michelle, which you've said you probably want to see that. If you don't have it embedded in a policy and it's a procedure, it's much easier to adjust it. And Ratwick, you know, they anticipate that there will be changes in the Title IX and other areas, albeit it may be 2 years or 3 years from now because of the changing of administration.
Yeah. So what do y'all think?
And I
guess
think
the question
Michelle's
is,
recommendation's good.
Michelle, you had mentioned there were some specific ones, and I guess I like the cleanliness. I don't want to be devil's advocate, if you will, but I like the cleanliness of a separate grievance policy, just because it's like that's the policy, and then if you know, like John mentioned, there's no concern. But you said there's some specific things that are required for this particular policy. Is it possible that you can say, I referenced the grievance policy, but I also add, you know, these 2 steps or whatever we need? Is that something that each policy could do, or are we now creating multiple grievance policies like John is warning against?
Well, the grievance procedure I mentioned, they just have specific titles. So for a general grievance procedure, you wouldn't necessarily need to take it to the Title IX coordinator that's listed. You could, you know, so there's just little fine-tuned details. Like, you're not changing the process, but there's just a few things that are delineated by name in this policy that, you know, if you had a grievance that you were looking to address, you wouldn't necessarily have to take it to the Title IX coordinator, although John is a Title IX coordinator and the administrator overall of all buildings. That makes it, you know, kind of a wash. But you would then just say MSA director or title, you know, so there's just a few tweaks, definitely. But you remember, it wouldn't be a policy of grievance. It would be a procedural grievance.
Okay.
Because policy would, then it's, you know, the same that's in here. Procedural is the difference. If you want your grievance procedure to be as a procedural document, or do you want it to be a grievance policy?
But we can't have both. John just said having 2 is not a good idea. You have one. And so I'm liking the shorter, and then we have a grievance procedure. I just think that then it fulfills everything. And like you said, if it's that same person, can't the procedure say Title IX coordinator / director? I don't know. But if it's not a policy, then it's a little different with the wiggle room, I think.
I agree.
I just disagree. And it's perfect. Like I said, I fully disagree. I think that when it's something having to do with sexual harassment, I would rather have the full recommended version, because that is a time period of extreme vulnerability for an individual and for the school. So I think as clear and concrete we can make it, and as much as the board can be kept aware of all the nitty-gritty details of that particular policy and procedure, I think it's good. But again, I understand how those things are limiting and how, I fully understand both.
I guess where I'm unclear is why can't there be the grievance policy in here that's under 3, starting on 65, and then we can have a grievance procedure that just is exactly like this. We just take out Title X personnel, Title X coordinator, a general. Why can't we have that separate for other things? Like, I'm confused why we can't do that. Is it why it's not wise?
Well, and we can reference this policy. So when we have things that require a grievance procedure, we can reference policy 522, and in the language say, instead of Title IX coordinator, utilize, so we can give the shared title. And Tom created a flow chart of reporting for grievance. So, you would kind of post that's kind of the visual that you post online to make it a little bit easier to understand who to go for what. So you can do that. But it just kind of depends on the preference. Unfortunately, with this one, there is no kind of like middle ground perfect option, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, how do we, Michelle, I've just, policy is something learning curve is steep still. How do we get this moving then? What would you suggest to get this moving just as a board?
I think we need to vote on both options. And you just, you have to pick an either or, so we'd have a vote for one and then have a vote for the other. And one of them is going to have 5.
Okay, so vote for which, and then
I can bring it as a consent to see the final version next month of whichever is our final option.
Would you do me a favor, just because you're better at this language? Would you make the motion so I don't screw it up, and then we can second it and discuss anything?
Annie, let's.
But we already have a motion.
Our original motion here, then, if that's.
Well, I thought I discussed it. I think I messed up when I was talking about it. And
right, but we technically have a motion on the floor, right? So.
Did I go through the whole motion thing? I think I said.
Well, you said motion and I seconded it, but I'm not sure.
All
right. We should just clear it up. I rescind.
Okay, and then this is where I get. Okay, right. So we rescind.
Annie, though, can I ask before we make a motion, just to Michelle, the concern of the procedure, I think, is that it could be maybe changed by the administration and not come back to the board. What is I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure I understand the concern of having it as a procedure for the grievance part.
For this part, it's embedded within this and within the practice. I can double check my notes from the workshop, but that the board can be held individually liable if the procedure isn't followed correctly. So not just MSA as a board, but us individually as board members can be held liable.
If a procedure, the school, let's say the school changed the procedure, then the board and the individuals on the board are responsible, you're saying?
If it's deemed that we operated negligently, yes. So it's just one of those things where a lot of the times, the board assumes an element of liability with policy and discussion and enforcement. It was just a bit of an extra.
So in order to kind of make sure it's always in front of us, you could require it to remain in a policy. And that way, at least all of us are kind of deciding together, right? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, so that if there is a change, it doesn't accidentally get lost in, things get lost sometimes in emails.
Sure.
You go, oh yeah, they told me about that like a month ago, I totally forgot. So things tend to get lost, but in the process of an investigation, when it has to be resolved, ideally in 90 days, hopefully in 120 days with the appeals process included. That extra month of missing something can mean that we operated in a perceived negligent manner. And even if it's found to be without merit, that's still a blow to the board and to MSA.
Sure. Thanks.
All right, so.
Before the motion happens, can we specifically say which of the two versions were like, I just don't know whatever motion happens, like I don't know what I'm voting on. So whoever makes the motion, if they could mention which version, that would be great. Because they're both in the packet, that's the problem.
Yes, and I have them, oh, dang it, hang on. And I have them in the packet as version 1, version 2, and I hope that it comes up. So you should see 11A and 11B.
Mhm.
So 11, yes, you'll see 11A version 2 and 11A. So 11A is the longer version. 11A version 2 is the shorter version. So version 2 has shorter policy, procedural document, more malleable. Standard version has procedure embedded within it, less malleable.
Michelle, where's the 11 you're referencing? Sorry, like which page?
Oh,
Or-
sorry.
That's okay.
No, I had them as already opened things so that I wouldn't lose track. Hang on, got to reopen the board window. You should see page, scrolling. It's very long.
I think it's 60 for version 1 and 61 for version 2. that correct?
61. I'm seeing page 61 is the long version. And then if you scroll, and I did receive the information, but I did receive the alternate coordinator, so I will change that as well, but I received it after I already uploaded it. And then page,
I think it was 60. I think that's
Going
right.
the other way.
yeah, I'm going the
think you're
reverse
right.
way.
Okay.
Sorry, I got to 429.
Yeah, I
Too far.
gotta know. Thank you.
Yeah. So I know, like it really is an imperfect. It's difficult, and it was a policy. I'm sure John can attest to this. That was rushed out and then backdated, and it to K-12 schools. Universities have had it for a while, but then the K-12, and we don't have the financial means to do a chunk of the stuff that they recommend doing, like always hiring a private investigator and always K-12 schools don't have a lot of the resources that allow for their recommendations to be fully complied with.
All right, should we?
Oh, sorry.
Before we go,
Yeah, go ahead, Dina.
uh,
Because I don't think it would be on there, but like A is the longer one, correct? Just one more time.
11A regular is longer. 11A version 2 is shorter.
Okay.
and what was the lawyer's recommendation and what's your recommendation?
The lawyer recommendation wasn't necessarily one over the other. It was just clarifying that if we were going to, and at least that's how I read the email, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we went with the longer procedural document, we should adopt the shorter policy. So those would be paired, because we just sent everything that we had drafted. We just were looking for feedback, just so that we correctly pair them. That if we wouldn't need the long procedural doc if we passed the longer version of it.
Their big concern is that you have a procedure and the long document where you actually have a procedure within the policy. Because now you have the potential of two grievance procedures conflicting. Their recommendation is pick one or the other.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm not seeing, I don't know how we do the motions. I'm not seeing an A or B either. Should we reference page?
Yeah, they're just both 11A, but I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we'll just use page numbers.
All right. Would you mind making that motion, Michelle? since you
Not
did-
at all.
Thank you.
All right, so hang on, I just want to put myself in as motion. All right, so I'm going to do two separate motions because we have two separate votes, okay? I think that makes the most sense, right, Annie?
Well, I would think just one motion for the long or the short, and then we can, that's what I was thinking. I don't know about the rest of you, but
I think just one.
yeah.
Okay.
So choose one or the other.
Okay.
Can we have
So
that
then,
option, or can we only vote yay or nay for something?
yay, nay, or abstain?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's clearer that we put one of them up and we vote for it. And if it passes, then we don't have to put the other one up.
Yep.
But if it doesn't pass, then we put the other one up. That's my recommendation.
That's a good one.
Okay, so hang on.
Very good, Rob. Look at me. I'm a little slow in the uptake right now. I'm like, yeah, that's what you should do. I like it.
Hey,
All
we're
right.
a team. We are a team.
Heck yeah. All right, so I will make a motion to approve policy 522, version 2, found on page 60 of the Board of Directors, January 19th packet. That's about as specific as I can be.
This is Rob. I second that motion.
All right. Any other discussion on that? That's
Just
the
for
short one.
clarification, that's the short one, right?
That is a short one.
Correct.
Okay.
So anybody like to have any more discussion on it? I'll just roll call.
I guess I'm concerned with the board being, is culpable the right word? Where wouldn't we be in the same situation regardless if it's in the policy or not? Just because it's in there and we miss an email doesn't seem to be any different than if it's not in there and we have a procedure and we missed an email. I might be missing something. I don't understand.
I'm interpreting it as if it's a procedure and it gets changed without us realizing, like we're held culpable for something we didn't know was happening.
Okay.
That's how I'm interpreting it. Is that
okay? That makes more sense.
Yeah, and so it's incumbent upon everybody to be very clear in their communication of any changes in the procedure, and for all of us to be very, very diligent about reviewing and expressing any questions or concerns about changes in the procedure prior to those changes being implemented.
And where would the procedure be?
It's supposed to be clearly posted on, like with this short policy, it's supposed to be clearly posted, nested. Same, it also requires us to post our training materials and there a whole bunch of other things. So it'll be on the board website.
But like, would it be in the handbook? Student parent
that hasn't been
handbook? Would it be, but that's what I mean, like, where is, I mean, sure, it's on our website.
It should be in all of them.
In the handbooks? Is it in, because then people are looking at it all the time. These are also things we have to approve. It's not like it isn't, we don't have the opportunity to put eyes on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. I agree. I think that somewhere, whatever version is there should be represented. The language states that it's clearly posted. Mm-hmm. Now, how many times and where that is up to the school. Okay. So as a school, regardless of which version, it definitely benefits us, I think, to be very clear and have it in more than one spot. You know, always a good plan.
My take is that in general, you know, procedures, you should be very careful about putting procedures in policy, because those are things that's why boards hire administrators that they trust, so that they do that job, and that it's not something that if something needs to be tweaked, it can be tweaked without having to go through two versions of meetings. And that's why you do procedures in that. And then you count on your administrators being upfront and clear and managing the school the best they know how. And so, again, that's just my experience.
Is there any other discussion? That was good. I like those clarifying points for sure. No?
So the current vote's on the short version with a separate.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. All right. I will roll call a vote then. Oops, I gotta get to my front page. Dan Ellingston?
Yes.
Cody Schneid?
Yes.
Michelle Kurkowski?
No.
Tina Albers?
No.
Adam Barth?
No.
Rob Kruger?
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
No.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas? Yes. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 4 noes. Motion carries. All right. All right, now let's, from there, we head to old business, approved policy 429. Do I have a motion to put 11B, approved policy 429, suspected misconduct and dishonesty by employees and others, to vote? Do I have a first?
This is Dan. I can motion.
Do I have a second?
This is Maggie. I'll second.
Okay. Discussion on this.
These are, remember last meeting, we had the changes, they were in blue and it was kind of hard to read, but we had talked about making a few additional changes and clarifications. So what is here is changed to red line and reflects the different secondary changes recommended from council and our discussion.
Yes, I noticed that. Thank you, Michelle. Any other discussion points on this?
There's only one minor thing I saw that maybe I just wasn't reading it right. It's very super minor, but I thought I would mention it. In section 3 at the bottom of the page.
And which page are you on in the board package again? I'm trying to flip through it.
Oh, I don't know. I made my comments on a separate document.
All right.
So I could,
I know where it is.
let me look. Well,
Under
anyway,
which header, Gina?
yeah,
Under
under section.
reporting responsibilities.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me look it up.
So 79, page 79, and which section starts the policy?
Yeah, I'll find it. Under reporting.
Okay.
It says against any employer, other reporting individual made a good faith. Is it? I was just going to ask, is it who made or making? I just didn't know if it made sense with the made, individual made. But maybe it does, and I just wasn't reading it right.
Oh, yes.
And it also says reprisal or retaliations twice in a row in the line right above it. That was the
Oh
thing
yeah,
I
didn't
noticed.
And I can double check it. It's I'll fix the reprisal. They had it as like track changes, so I had to go and manually change all of them. So it was a little bit of a annoyance.
Yeah, I think it's made in good faith.
Yeah, it's supposed to be made in good faith.
Yes. Just some English. Are there any other comments on that? Right, and I think, Michelle, we can approve that just with those minor changes, right? Is that, or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're non-substantive.
Okay. I would, if there's no more discussion, I'll go ahead and roll call a vote. Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneid,
Yes.
Michelle Krakowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bard,
Yes.
Rob Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas, yes. That is all yeses, motion carries. All right. We'll head down to 12A, which is a review of bylaws. And gosh, those are online. I hope people were able to see that. So John, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Once a year, the board is to look at the bylaws and just review them to see if there's any changes that you would like to make to them. Assuming that everybody's looked at them, I don't know if anybody has any changes they would like to see made. The last time I think the bylaws have really been addressed, there was a move to change the membership that did not happen. At this time, I guess, unless anybody has anything that they want to change with the bylaws, we just do this on an annual basis to review them, to see if there's any parts of the bylaws that we want to change or address, some clarifications that might be made. Other than that, if nobody has any, then we can move on.
All right. Did we want to, this is an approval process, right? Because I see that they were revised, or is it just a discussion, John?
Just to review and discuss unless somebody has something they want to address.
Yeah. I've been through this doc pretty thoroughly this year.
I'll admit, if no one else does, that I missed them. My process is going through the whole board packet, so I didn't go back up and see that it wasn't put in there. So I'll just throw that out, that maybe it would be something that, I don't even know if we don't post it again, maybe just a little reminder for people like me to say, hey, the bylaws are located here. That's it, you know, and I can go out and find it, but my process failed me in this instance, so I didn't read them. So I'll admit that I'm delinquent in that, not going back and checking the agenda again.
That's a good point, because I actually have read these what feels like dozens of times this year, and I was like, bylaws? What bylaws? I'm like, oh, they're on the board of directors. So.
I'm frantically reading them now, but I feel like that's not doing it service. So,
how about anybody else? Okay, so
Dan, I was in the same boat there, but I don't remember having any issues from last time we reviewed them.
They were reviewed in 2019. So, all right. So we move on then to 12B to discuss the community survey. This will go out as part of the final director evaluation. That's that part. So these were questions from last year. And then I just did what Rob asked from the prior, is separate those 4 entities. So is there any additional question? I didn't know if we should include COVID questions or what, but these were from last year. So again, this is the first read. If you want any changes, if you want to have them added to next month, we'll go ahead and approve these as the questions that I'll put in as a survey question. And they start on page 83, by the way.
I don't know if this would be a yes or no question, or maybe an open-ended one. Could we ask if there's anything that we had to do because of COVID this year that they liked and would like to repeat or see considered in the future?
So something that part of our, how would you word that? Like, because that would be
Maggie, you're an English teacher. Maybe you can help better with that.
Aren't we talking about the director's evaluation though?
So Rob, the way this works, according to the time schedule, is this is the community. This goes out to the community now.
No, right. But I just want to make sure that we're not pinning something on John that's not.
Yes, correct. No, that's not a virus, right? You know,
is this just about John or about this everything in general?
No, this is
John.
This is a director evaluation, one of the final pieces.
Then never mind. This is about. I thought this was for just in general.
No.
I think John should have cured COVID by now, but since he hasn't, I'm not sure it's fair that we pin it on him.
Or at least, I'm 60, John. At least I get a rock, paper, scissors shot at getting a vaccine next time. But no, I'm just teasing.
I'm already getting heat for this now. I can already see this. Yeah.
No, my husband had it. He had it, and I never got it. So I figured,
You're immune.
I don't know. I doubt I'm immune, but okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, think about it. And you could shoot me. You could shoot me an email if you do come up with 1 or 2, and I'll bring it to the board next time, and then we'll finalize these. But these are, all right. So that's page 83. Now we're approved grade level capacities for lottery, page 88. We are going to approve those. So I'll go ahead and move to approve the grade level capacities for lottery, 12C, item 12C on the agenda. Can I get a second?
This is Maggie. I'll second.
All right, let's discuss these.
Okay, so what you have before you is the current enrollment, the recommended capacity for next year, and then what's additional draws, and I'll explain kind of what that is. Additional draws is, so in high school, because of the board policy that after day 10, we close enrollment. Well, I should say after the second week of school. It may not be day 10, it may be day 9. We close enrollment for the high school. So whatever number that you have admitted, so if we admit 88 ninth graders, and that's the top number, after that second week of school, we're done with 88. If we have 5 students that withdraw, we're down to 83. We don't fill them in like we do in the middle school. So the reason we put the additional draws in there is to bump that number up for attrition. So with the idea that we are going to lose some students. For example, last year we had a capacity of 88. So we had 88 students on campus. We're now down to 84 in ninth grade. And we're not going to replace them. So we take a financial hit if we ever fall below that particular level. So in the recommended capacity, you see 85. And after doing some adjusting and looking at numbers, I think we can not have a draw of 9, but drop that down to 5. So we would have a total admittance in the ninth grade of 90, with the idea that at the end of the school year we'll be down to 85 through our attrition, and that would help us meet the budget for next year. I did meet with the 8th grade teachers this morning. And through a discussion with that group, we had a really good discussion, and some of their concerns, which had to do with class sizes and were fairly valid. And they came up with the idea, well, and actually, I really like their idea of, rather than 88 7th graders and then 92 8th graders, what if we went with 90 7th graders and 90 8th graders? So then you're only adding 2 to the 8th grade and 2 to the 7th grade, rather than 4 new students to the 8th grade. Part of the reason last year that we bumped that up to 92 was because of the attrition rate from 8th grade going into 9th grade. We lose a lot of students, so the idea was that we'll bump the 8th grade up so we can retain more students going into 9th grade, because that's typically when we see the biggest loss is between 8th and 9th grade. By moving those 2 students from 8th grade down to 7th grade, excuse me, the other benefit you have is now you're only acclimating 2 additional students in the 7th grade, and we typically do not lose any students between 7th and 8th grade. That would then allow us to have those students on campus for a longer period of time going into 9th grade. And school is all about relationships. The more time that we can have those students building relationships with other students, the less likely they may be to leave. So by having a class of 90 in the 7th grade and then a class of 90 in the 8th grade, we would allow 2 more students an extra year to build relationships before they go into the high school. The other benefit of that is not particularly this coming year, but the next year, assuming we keep those numbers at 90 and 90, the 8th grade would not have any new students. We typically do not lose any students between 7th and 8th grade. So we would, rather than acclimating 4 new students every year, we'd really drop that down to 2 students a year that we'd be acclimating to MSA. So that's kind of a justification that I would like to make, an adjustment I would like to make to those capacities. So the new capacities would be 6th grade would be at 88, 7th grade would be at 90, 8th grade would be at 90, 9th grade would be at 85 with 5 additional draws for a total of 90. And then the 10th grade would be at 75. The 11th grade is at 65. And the 12th grade would be at 58. Last year we had it at 60, but the likelihood of bringing in 2 seniors to be successful at MSA is extremely low. And I guess my recommendation is to drop that down to 58. Let's just close it. So, and there still is a possibility we might lose a student. So we might have 1 open spot. But the likelihood of finding a senior to come in and meet our standards is fairly low. And then by having this capacity, we will now have a student enrollment of 551, which is 5 more students than we had last year for our capacity, which would help with the budget, the potential freezing of the revenue for next year. So it would offset some of the possibility of having to cut to make our budget work next year. The other thing you should be aware of is when we do these, when you set the capacities, if we have, for example, and this is not going to happen, but if we have 84 freshmen this year, and you set the capacity of 85 for sophomores, if all 84 freshmen came back next year, we would not have a lottery for them. We would accept all 84. So we would be over capacity. We're not going to make current MSA students leave because the capacity might be a little lower than the total number of students that we have. But that, we will lose some of those students. That's just historically how it's occurred.
There's historically been losses from 10th to 11th grade as well.
Yes, typically, but not as many. We typically lose maybe 1 or 2, and a lot of it has to do with academic requirements.
Okay, because there's more than just a 1 or 2 drop.
Right. And this year, actually, this year I would say you can't put a lot of stock in the numbers this year because we were distance learning. But we did see a drop in the junior and the senior class that we don't typically see. We do see some fluctuations year to year. Some years we don't lose any, some years we lose a few. This year we happen to lose a few. I don't know what it'll be. It's hard to predict how many we will lose next year, but we will lose some. What is that number? Typically in the high school, we lose less in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade than, the 8th and 9th grade transition is usually when we lose the most. And that's just because they want to go somewhere else.
May I also just confirm? So I was just jotting down the numbers change in the notes. So 9th grade, you said we'll add 5 draws, bringing it to 90. This still says 85. So in my notes, should I say that it would be 90 or 85 represents the additional 5 draws?
The capacity would be 85, but we're going to draw 90 for the lottery. And the reason I say that is because but when we set our budget, we use the capacity numbers for our budgeting purposes.
So does that mean there'd be a 5-person wait list for that grade that would extend past the first 10 days?
No. So what that means is when we do our lottery in February, the capacity is 85, but we're going to draw 90 names, or that we'll have 90 spots. we don't know how many people, how many 8th graders are not going to come back. But not all 92 are going to come back. We will probably lose at least 10 of those. So that means if if we have 92, we lose 10, we have 82 students going into 9th grade, we would draw for 8 spots to fill up to 90, with the idea that at the end of the school year, we will probably be at 85 because of past attrition rates. That's typically what will happen. We will lose students, and because of our policy of not replacing them, we will lose those students. And but for budgeting purposes, we won't have to cut anything because we've already planned for that.
So in other words, even though we have them fill out an intent to return, traditionally we've still lost 5 in later on.
Right, during the school year, yeah. So like this year, we started with 88, we're down to 84.
So any more questions, discussions, clarifications?
I just want to comment, maybe Adam can add too. That seems consistently even back what was going on when I was a student. The dropping about 8th grade.
Yes, I think you're right.
I can't remember that far back, so I'll have to take your word for it, Cody.
Imagine, yes, our old brains, yes. Oh, you young ones, you're so adorable. All right, I am going to go ahead and if there's no more discussion, go ahead and roll call and approval for these. And that would be Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneid,
Yes.
Michelle Krakowski.
Can I just confirm that our vote is for the recommended alterations that John suggested, not the one in the packet?
Yes.
Okay, then
Yeah.
yes.
That's right. I said yes to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bard,
Yes.
Rob Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Berggraf,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas. Yes. That is all yes. Motion carries. All right. Discuss director's evaluation process. Look at us. Did we not do that in workshop, people? We did. So I'm going to skip it and head on. Good for us. And then we will take a look again. We did this a little different. John went ahead and shifted this monthly COVID wrap up here in his, I think it's the last page on page 137. Yeah, 137. So we'll have a discussion of that. I do have a couple of thoughts, but I would like other people first to add. You might ask me the same thing. Is there any discussion points or questions for John on page 137, monthly COVID evaluation?
I have a question. How is it going with the broadband update, the air purifier update, and well, that for now, I have more later.
So the broadband, we're waiting. We're basically the contract that we can sign to update the broadband is a year-long contract. So rather than go enter into it now and not really need the broadband, we're waiting until it looks like we will have people on campus, and that at that point, that's when we'll execute that. As far as having the fiber optic cable, the funding for that was going to come out of the AFC, but that there was quite a bit of a shortfall there, so that's kind of hit a little bit of a standstill, I guess would be the best way to put it. So the broadband is kind of falling back to we'll bump it up, but we have to do a new contract in order to do that. And we're going to wait until we actually need it so we can maximize the contract itself. As far as the all the air purifiers that we have ordered are on campus and operational. I don't know if there's more to that question, Jennifer, or not, but we ordered, I want to say we have one for each COVID room that are a higher level than, and then we've got one in each of the buildings in their common areas, and then one in the band room as well. I think there were a total of 7, but I'd have to go back and look at the invoices. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, great.
And about the broadband, I think Justin, I don't know if I've had conversation with him and you and both in my head, so here I am. So I feel like he said that would be enough with the hybrid numbers that we have with Zooming, taking larger broadband, but that would be enough for us to run the school, he felt, in his professional opinion. And so because we are the hybrid numbers, I think there's more that are opting right now for distant learning actually than there are for the broadband. And again, a little bit of the clarification, we are at MER 9 for the HEPA filters. We can't go any higher because that'll burn out the furnaces or whatever. And that with the ionization exchange or whatever, that little, remind me of R2D2's little machines. And I am a science teacher, and these are very technical terms. I just want you all to know that. Because I see it that way. That is sufficient, you feel? Or I'm sure with immunization is a game changer with that for at least his staff. But
yeah, in the COVID rooms, we have the 3 COVID rooms that we have those exchangers in them, so that they actually take out, they capture the particles, and then they also put into the air, the way I understand it anyway, is they put in, if you want to think of it, we'll use your Star Wars. They send out little little fighter units that shoot down the coronavirus and eliminate it so it doesn't travel to other rooms.
Yeah. And other also like flu, bugs and viruses.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Annie?
Yep.
To your point, a MERV 9, just so everyone knows, they won't be able to catch any sneeze, droplet, like that. But that's where the air purification would help in those certain areas.
The other thing that, because I had a long discussion with Train about this, big concern at building A, because that air exchange handler cannot handle MERV 13 filters. However, that filtration system that's in building A has the highest capacity for outdoor air, bringing it into the classrooms. So, which is actually better than sending your air through MERV 13 because you're getting fresh air from the outside. So out of all the buildings that we have, building A actually has the best air quality as far as pulling in air from the outside and dispersing it through the building. So if I had to choose a building to be in right now, rather than sitting here in building C, I would rather be in building A if you're just looking at air quality.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on the numbers, John? Are we still looking at that 20 to 30? I just pulled up the Minnesota. Has that changed at all? Like to get back to hybrid?
Yeah,
to get to hybrid.
Yeah, the high school and middle school numbers are still the same. They have not changed at all. It was only the elementary that changed.
Okay, so we are tracking, I'm looking at 40s and maybe 50s, and we're still trying to get down to below 30 consistently, such that we could do a hybrid, right, discussion. And that's from the state of Minnesota?
Right, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And also,
because some of the questions you hear from parents is, why aren't we going back, right? Other school districts are going back and all these things. And what I'm hearing is the numbers for us right now are not allowing it. And then the second thing would be, are we ready once the numbers allow it? And I'm hoping we're already doing the are we ready now discussion, which we've had many months before. But right now, the thing that's really holding us back is the numbers, the case rate. Is that right? Is that fair?
I would say, well, that's a big one. The other part of that is still, and you know, this is where the vaccine comes in and hopefully changes some of the ability of staff to come back on campus. Because if the numbers sort of still hold true, we're looking at 16 staff members, teachers that are not going to be on campus. So then we have to come up with alternative ways to supervise them.
Well, now that brings me to my point. I was kind of nervous at the very last paragraph that we are investigating the possibility of hiring monitors. Like, that sounds like we're still dreaming and we don't have action. Like, are you actually finding people, trying to find people, posting for people, interviewing for people, talking to people, background checks for people, just people, so that's done?
So that came up with the COVID-19 liaison team, and there's actually I think a question or two that are going to be in that survey for parents to show an indication if they would be willing to come into school and be a monitor. That would be a paid position, but 16 is a big number, and we still have to have. We do not want to tap into our subs on a regular basis for that, because we're going to need teacher subs. We've used some throughout the year, but 16 is a big number.
Yeah, but I mean, we're butting up against, let's go. Right. It's time. And I just feel like it is a big number, which is why we need to be a verb right now and get people. And then I noticed under survey results, and this might be happening on page 7 of the original minutes from last actual board meeting, you said that you would be surveying parents in January. And then it says here on page 137, there were no formal surveys of parents, students, or staff related to COVID-19 during the past month. So is that a yes to be surveying people, or?
Yeah, the goal is to send the survey out at the last week in January.
Okay, so that'll happen. And that would include, we're going to try and get people in to monitor after, because that's something that takes some thought process. It's something that required us to think ahead and secure and have background checks and all that. So that would be a crime that we know for how many months now that we have 16 people we need to have supervision for. How many months have we known that? And we're still at investigating the possibility. That bothers me. I feel like we should be better than investigating the possibility. That's how I feel. But anyway, okay. I think that also the thing too, I have to say, and I hope you guys cut me off. I don't know yet how it looks. I don't know the plan of when we arrive. Like, I'm a staff. Like, how does it look with touch points and wiping down and having a flow? I don't actually know what that looks like if I'm back in person. And I feel it's like January, and I'm one of those staff. I'm a risk taker, no doubt. I want to see my kids. I don't care if I have to rock, paper, scissors and don't get a vaccine, but I actually don't know or have had training with what it looks like to be a teacher at Math and Science Academy in Building A, and what are the procedures and how do we make sure they get done? Like, if we say we have to wipe down between lunches, wipe down doorknobs, wipe down hotspots, where is that procedure? And how come I don't know what's going on? I just feel like by this time we are months away from just getting in to see our kids, and I have no idea. That's just me. But I also stay up at night when I don't have a lesson plan. I'd rather lose sleep before I walk into a classroom unprepared. So I feel unprepared, but that could be just my crazy, ridiculous head. So do we have plans and protocols?
Yeah, so a lot of the same protocols that we're doing for the Win Fridays are going to be in place for hybrid. And those teachers that have had people on campus have gone through those protocols, or should have, and have access to those procedures when they have students in their classrooms. Because as a classroom teacher, you're going to be responsible for your own classroom, just like you are when you have students coming in the Win Friday activities. Not a lot is going to be different, other than on a hybrid day, you're going to have lunchrooms that are going to be utilized, and we have lunchroom monitors that are going to be in charge of those. So a classroom teacher is not going to necessarily have to go into a lunchroom and do that. The other part of that is, that's assuming that we have all of the students or many students in a lunchroom. Some students will have to be in classrooms to do lunch, and how we rotate that until we know the exact numbers, because some of those numbers will change from what we did in our original surveys with parents. There will be some parents that don't want their child to come in for 2 months of in-person, whereas when they were originally surveyed, that they would have had their students come on campus. So some of those numbers are in flux. That also, we just don't know what those numbers are at this point in time. And that's part of that is going to be addressed in the survey that we did with the COVID liaison team. Not that they're going to make a commitment and put their name on there at this point in time, but we're going to get a much better idea of how many parents are likely to have their child come in on campus when they said they were going to originally, and then how many said, nah, you know what, we're going to opt out for distance learning. So we have a better idea of how many students are actually going to be here. But a lot of those procedures, if you did a Win Friday activity, you had those procedures given to you, so you would know what those are. If you haven't been on campus, those were provided and will be provided again as we come up with on the 29th for their next Win activity. Win Friday.
As someone on the COVID liaison team, it was my understanding too that with the decision to come back, we have to take a minimum of 2 days, if not more, to train the staff to get all those things in place too, with those procedures. So it wouldn't just be like, okay, it's Monday, the kids are coming.
That makes me feel better, because I actually had kids on for Win Friday, and there isn't. I ran through the procedures. There's no procedure that said who's doing the in between, who's touch. I mean, the only thing is, John, we have building A is super great for the airflow, right? But you're forgetting who's in there. 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, they just touch everything. So although the air quality is good, this virus doesn't last long time on surfaces. So I'm very grateful that we'll have training. That's what I wanted to hear, because I kind of don't know what's going on. So thank you.
I just had 2 questions. First up, and this one kind of goes across the board for, in school and also for activities. How really are we evaluating our procedures for individuals being held accountable who are exposed or testing positive? There's a lot of examples where individuals are either actively positive or should be quarantining and don't, or send their student to school. So how are we really checking or holding this accountable, or what is our plan for that eventuality? I don't want it to happen, but I want to know that we have kind of a plan or something that we would do. And then the second question I have is, part of the re-entry to partial or full in-person learning requires a welcome back, not only to welcome them back to our community and for everybody to join together and really be in the classroom again, but to get everybody up to date. What are the procedures? What is the pattern flow in the hallways? Who is going to be wiping your desk? You, when, every time, how, this is part of that welcome back. So what task force is responsible for planning and implementing that?
So we have really, the minimum is 2 days. We have up to 5 days, and actually longer if we want to do the transition from a distance learning to the in-person. So one of those days we would definitely have a welcome back to school kind of activity where parents can come in, students can come and get acclimated to the building. To talk about the kind of the reassurance, a lot of this is you have to trust people are going to do the right thing. We're not going to do screenings, because now all of a sudden you're running, and temperature checks, because now you're running into all kinds of HIPAA potential violations because you're collecting medical data. So screening wise, there a lot of it is it's going to be on your honor. Fill out the check form. You're stating that you don't have these particular symptoms when you come on campus. Obviously, if we see some of those symptoms being displayed, we can. That's why we have COVID rooms. We're going to remove them from classes. Contact parents. They're going to go home. Then they're going to fall under the protocol of being isolated or under quarantine. But fundamentally, we are not a healthcare facility, so we are not going to be testing them, let alone we don't have the staff to do that kind of testing. And I don't know if I'd want to do that kind of testing. I believe that people are going to do the right thing. If they have a fever, they're not coming to school. If they're displaying symptoms of having COVID, they're not going to come to school. Will some of them come? I don't know. If they do, I really hope they don't. Then we have to deal with the consequences if they do come on campus with it. That's the one crux of the entire plan that's been put forth by MDE is that people will choose to do the right thing for the good of everybody. And if they don't, everybody will suffer for it. And, you know, we may have a situation where we have a COVID outbreak and we have to go back to distance learning. That's the consequence of, you know, people coming on campus if they shouldn't. So I guess reassurance wise, I can't reassure anybody that there's not going to be somebody that comes on campus that isn't going to be displaying that, but I would sure hope that they would think twice about it and stay home. They can always distance learn until they improve and are past that. Even if it's a mild cold, let's get that cleared up before you come on campus, just because it's good for everybody.
I think just one other thing is having a plan before the training, like presented to parents and staff, would be really helpful for people to make the most informed decision and to be able to reflect on things and, you know, may ask questions. So as a parent, I'd rather see that way earlier than April. That's just me.
And I think as staff also, yeah.
Yeah.
Has there been any thought to maybe bringing back 6th grade first? Because I know 6th grade was included in the elementary school category with the governor, and 833 6th graders are coming back. I think it's February 15th. Have you thought about maybe bringing them back first for a test, or what are your thoughts?
That we did look at that. The problem that we have that most of the bigger schools don't have is our teachers are, you know, they teach multiple grade levels. So the challenge with that is to bring students in when they may only have 1 or 2 of their teachers on campus becomes a challenge for them and the teachers. I guess the biggest holdback is if we had just 6th grade teachers, it would be much easier to do if that's the only classes they taught all day long. Unfortunately, almost all of our 6th grade teachers teach other courses or other classes in addition to that, and a number of those teachers have indicated that they are uncomfortable coming on the campus. So the number of teachers that you would be bringing in maybe, is roughly 2 or maybe 3. So busing wise, that is something that the board would have to approve to do that. And it's about a month out if we did that, because we have to arrange for busing with South Washington County to pick up those, those students.
Does that answer your question, Jennifer? Yeah, I think probably haven't thought about it as much, but yes, it's tricky because, it is definitely tricky. All right, any other questions about page 137, the review, the monthly COVID process? All right, let's move on to 12F, which is discussion of staff stipends. That's John.
Actually, that came out of the finance committee, and I think that's actually in the minutes. So
I put a version of it from our minutes into our packet.
Yeah.
So it's the last page of the packet.
Yeah, I saw that on page 138, yes.
So basically what we discussed is while we can't, we haven't met with Dustin yet to go over our finances. We're doing that on the 21st. We did want to at least discuss for record if we're going to do a stipend, what the benchmark's going to be, so the staff will know what the benchmark would be. Would you agree with that discussion, John?
right, and typically if we're going to do a stipend, it has to be approved early enough in the school year where a stipend has to be a performance-based stipend, so you have to approve it early enough in the school year where you still have an opportunity to influence student achievement. If you wait too long, basically, if you wait past the February board meeting, highly frowned upon to try to do a stipend at that time, after that time, because then you're looking at really, you only have 3 months left of the school year. So if you, depending on what your goal is, to really affect student achievement in 3 months is out of an entire school year is probably not a wise course of action. It's probably going to bring a lot of red flags when you go through your audit. So if we do a stipend, we would want to definitely have it approved at the latest in February. So we brought in and have not having a final number as far as are we going to be able to do this or not financially. That's where the meeting with Bergeron comes into play. The finance committee came up with basically the idea that if we did a stipend, we would do it along graduation rates. At this point in time, it looks like we should be able to do a stipend of $2,000 per staff member at a maximum, and that would be prorated on their based on their FTE status, very similar to what we did last year. So at the bottom, you can see what that motion or what that stipend would be, that all staff members receiving benefits, that would mean you have to be a 0.5 FTE or above, will receive $2,000 prorated by their FTE status if current MSA seniors have a graduation rate of 93%. That 93% would allow 3 seniors not to graduate, and the school would still meet the performance stipend, or the performance goal.
I have a question on that. First of all, so if I understand the math here, you said you have 54 employees. So you're saying the finance committee believes we have $108,000 potential money in the budget to cover this cost. Is that correct, Cody?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it would, some of them, because it's based off their FTE, some would get like 1,000. But yes, we have
54 employees roughly.
Right. We like I said, we're meeting on the 21st to go over the budget and reevaluate it. But from our initial evaluation, we have the funds for it.
Okay. And then why would we not just pay a stipend? People did all kinds of extra crazy this year in the COVID year, and to raise a benchmark in a year like this doesn't seem to make sense to me, where there's families struggling, students struggling, and I don't want there to be at the end a feeling of, oh, we got to pass this student. They really shouldn't have passed, but we want our graduation rates up so we can get it. That just seems to be a little on the shady side, where people earned it already. Why wouldn't we just vote on giving a stipend if it fits in the budget?
So there has to be a performance matrix or performance measure with it. We just can't give out a stipend.
Based on who's, I'm not curious. I don't understand that law. So where is that at?
John?
I would have to go back and get the legal citation from Dennis from Clifton Allen Larson, or Clifton Larson Allen, Clifton Allen Larson, because when we first did the performance stipend, that was the only condition that we would be able to give a stipend out, because it's a public fund. Because we were talking about public monies, it has to be a performance stipend. Otherwise, it's construed as a bonus, and we are not allowed to give bonuses out. It has to be something tied directly with your student performance, because that's what educators do, or schools do, is educate students. And because that was the explanation at the time, that otherwise it's seen as a bonus, and it's illegal to give bonuses to public officials.
To follow Rob's train of thought, though, I mean, maybe even just the current, to be honest, if we kept the same graduation rate during COVID year, that's also commendable, right? I mean, if you said 90%, just as an example. So I think Rob's question is, where's that number coming from? And I get the concern that we're just distributing public money, without the right metrics. But I like where Rob is going a little bit of how do we kind of commend all the efforts that have been going on, and maybe one small way could be this within the laws and within all the regulations and everything, right?
Yeah. So for those of you that are new to the board from last year we had to change our goal, because our first goal was based off of
the testing,
standardized test scores, because of COVID. So first we did a 95% graduation rate, and then I was the one that motioned to drop it down to 90, just because we were changing our teaching, we switched to distance learning, and we had no idea how that transition would affect students. So we can keep it at 90. That would be consistent. Though we do strive, the 93 was discussed because we do want to strive to improve ourselves. I feel the same for 90 or 93. I don't feel like it would be admitting defeat or anything to keep it at 90, just because it's such a unique year. Though normally I would like to see it increase, but this year is completely different.
And to that end, we had a discussion at the finance committee meeting, because I brought up the 95% because that's what's in our contract goals. And so the 93% was actually kind of a compromise between last year's 90% and our contract goal of 95%. So that's kind of where the 93 came from, along with the idea that, well, we do want to improve from where we were last year.
What about, John, if we kind of did both? Just an idea where the full stipend is available at, let's say, 95 or 93, and then you ratio it down 1 or 2%. Would that meet everything? I mean,
I tried to do that 2 years ago, and at the time I was doing that. Many of you may remember Judith Darling, who worked for Berggren. She said, yeah, she checked with a couple lawyers and said, no, you have to pick a number. You can't do a graduated. You have to pick a standard and stick with it. Otherwise, it'll be seen as you're just trying to give people money.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what Robert, to bring to for your point. One thing I'll cover next in our finance training is sometimes we are given rules that we just have to follow because we're getting money from the government. And I agree with you that, you know, I feel like we should be able to somehow give out money, but we have to follow the rules. So that's the best way.
Again, speaking as a college professor, it's just all too often that schools find ways to graduate students that are not ready to move on so they can keep their graduation rates up. And colleges are paying a serious price this year. Students are paying a serious price because of what happened last spring, not particularly at our school, but at many other places where students graduated that weren't ready for college. And so I'm not an advocate of saying, let's give bonuses to get graduation rates, because that tends to give sometimes some incentive to pass a kid that's not ready to move on. I don't know what our other metrics are. I don't want to hold us back. I don't believe we're that type of school. I just feel it's a slippery slope that many of our colleagues in the state have gone down the hill on.
Robert, to your point, I think keeping it at 90 or 93 would, I think we could argue that would give enough wiggle room where no teacher should have to consider that. But I agree, that could be I work as a tutor and I get students that I'm not sure how they passed their other classes. I'm not sure what's going on. But I feel like our organization, I would hope none of our teachers would pass a student just to make a stipend.
And we have proof that they have not done that in the past. I mean, not necessarily with the graduation rate, but we have not met our performance goal in the past, and we don't. So I think that alone demonstrates that, you know, we're not gonna fudge the numbers just to make some money for people. We're gonna do the right thing, and if we don't make it, we don't make it. But you know, yeah, it'd be really nice, especially this year, if we have the funds available, to give it to those people that, you know, that really earned it. And I think everybody earned it. It's just a matter of we have to find the vehicle, the performance vehicle that allows us to do that, within the context also of, you know, we are still going to be held accountable by our authorizer to meet the contracted goal.
So does this then come back next month as an approval for stipend? Is that how that works? So we discussed it, or how does that, is that right? Or
we don't have the dollar amount to approve yet.
Okay.
But we wanted to at least have a public record of
have a discussion. Okay, I got it.
So that it's on record that we're not putting this in at the last minute. We're discussing time to make the
okay, I got it. Yeah.
So the staff has an incentive to work towards.
Okay.
And I honestly feel like making sure students graduate is not an extra incentive. That should be part of every teacher's goal, I guess.
I mean, honestly, you wouldn't work at this school if you're willing to lay your academic integrity down. Mm-hmm. It's a very hard school, and we hold that very high. Do we have any more discussion on that? All right, I'd like to enter into 12G that we put on the agenda. We are actually, the time is flying. I think June's still a long ways away, but we're getting there. We have to put together and appoint a board of director election committee. It actually, as it turns out, We are, for the first 2 weeks in February, we need to be prepared to recruit parents and community candidates. So I am asking, and actually Gina Alvarez has offered as the teacher constituent to lead this group, and it's policy 201.1 is the board of director election. And I'm going to actually gently but lovingly voluntold maybe one or two of you. I'm hoping, Adam, since you are BFFs and you talk Justin language, we would like you speak Justin, actually you speak your own language, but I'm wondering if you would work with Gina, because one of the things the board chair last year said, listen, if we can get the electronic ballots online, if we can get the people to sign up online this year, it's just a whole, and have some of the constituent, like how do we do IP addresses, and you and Justin, whatever. If you would be willing to work with Gina this month and I'll send you the email and I'll send you the policy, kind of work on this with Justin. Justin's got to be the person at the center. As the community constituent, I would sure appreciate it.
I accept the appointment.
Oh, thank you. Because you speak the language. You speak.
And Annie,
yes.
So I do not need to lead it. If anybody else is interested, I was totally willing to be on it. I can lead it. If anybody else is interested, because this is like, I'm just a temporary fill-in. So if somebody else wants to be able to help out next year, that might be a better choice.
I did it last year, so I can help out.
All right. So do you think we need any more than 3 of you to just kind of guide this process? So the way I'm looking at it is, look at the bylaws, figure out how we can, somehow online get a process where we could get people to self-nominate, and then the process of the actual voting process. So, and Justin has to be involved. But if we could just have that worked on this month and maybe report back to the board. I know we kind of have to have the self-nominations in order February-ish. So I can't believe we're here already. So I'd appreciate it. So it sounds like Cody and Adam and Gina work on this. I'll send you both the policy and just kind of, if we can do this virtual, and also maybe the last year's chair's suggestions. And again, the actual running of the ballots, which were paper last year, happened in the middle of COVID. So it was just, this is kind of driving that virtual or that electronic piece. Thank you very much. And that's it. That's all I have to say about that. All right, look at.
What positions are opening up?
Oh, I'll get you all that, Cody. So this one, we have Adams being, unless Adam also, he would have to self-nominate. We have Adams up for this year. That would be one community member. We have Rob as a parent opening up. And then we have Judy Seeberger's position, which Gina's filling, opening up. So it's one parent, one community member, and one teacher. And I'll be hitting the teachers up. So, all right, very good. Thank you. All right, so now we are at 13, and I really don't have to go all over this other than the fact that they're just our goals. We know we're in comprehensive. By the way, the closed meeting is 5 o'clock next Monday. I want you guys, because we've been meeting at 6. But the board goals, comprehensive review, I have the dates listed there. Finance training will be next month during workshop with Cody. Expansion end of year goal is still out there. We'll be working through that, and then committee purpose statement and contract language we dealt with today. And there's the dates and times of all the upcoming workshops and meetings there in 14. They're also posted online. Not all the strategic plans, but everything else. So with that, do we have any questions on any of that? Then I would joyfully, because we're hard workers and ready to chill, like to motion to adjourn the meeting. I'll move to adjourn it. Do I have a second?
I can second. This is Dan.
All right. So we will officially adjourn our meeting at 8:32 p.m. Have a very lovely evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Do we have to vote to adjourn?
Oh, yes, we do. Cody, I'm like 1 foot out the door. Can you tell? I'm like, phew. Oh, that's like when that vaccine comes out. You're going to hear my tires going out the ready to go get it. All right, thank you. And all you all keep me honest. All right, let's do a roll call vote to adjourn. Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneid,
Yeah.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bard,
Yes.
Robert Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas, yes. That's all yeses at 8:33. We adjourn our evening. Thank you very much, everybody.